Marvel. This Magneto is a good guy. Chapter 21. Your Majesty the King, you can tell from my appearance that I am half Asian. In my mother's country, there is a word, a good deed a day, which means to do one good deed every day. Eric blushed, stared into the king's eyes, and made up a story impassionedly. I can't be that perfect, but I always keep in mind my mother's teachings and be a good person. 6 months ago, my father suddenly found me. I had never met him, but I knew he was my father, because he kept telling me to be a good person after meeting him. Then he left, leaving me with the next big inheritance as a sudden death. Being a good person is what my parents asked me to do, and I also strictly demand myself. When I met Nijidaka, I didn't know his life experience. In my eyes, he was just a poor child, a kid who needed help, so I helped him. However, I inherited my father's company. I want to do a big thing and help more people. I can't protect Nijidaka anytime and anywhere, and I can't give him the warmth of a family, so I just sent him back to Wakanda. I never wanted to ask Wakanda for anything. Eric became more and more excited as he spoke, and shouted as if he had been greatly insulted. Your Majesty the King, I am just a very ordinary good person, please don't use dirty money to insult my character. I know you have a lot of vibranium, and I know that vibranium is very valuable, but so what? Without a noble heart, what's the use of having more money? King T'Chaka was shocked, the queen hiding outside the house was shocked, and the little Black Panther and Little Storm lying under the window were also shocked. Eric, what a good person. King T'Chaka actually doesn't believe that there are people in the world who don't want vibranium. The education he received since childhood and his personal experience all told him that in this world, as long as he leaves Wakanda, he will be voyeuristic. Vibranium vampires, as long as they are not careful, they will tear open Wakanda's protective shell and take a deep breath. But Eric's words made him doubt his own knowledge. Little Black Panther and Little Storm have eyes full of little stars. They are still young, and what they accept every day is the beautiful world that adults weave for them. They think that there are still many good people in the world, even the little Black Panther, the prince, does not have them now. Accepting the contamination of too much dirty politics. Two pure hearts were deeply moved by Eric's heartfelt speech, and felt that Eric was really a good person. Okay, I apologize for my words. King T'Chaka bent down slightly, lowered his head to apologize, and Eric calmed down. Your Majesty, I'm sorry, I'm a little emotional. Eric looked at the king apologetically. It's okay, Mr. Eric, you are our friend in Wakanda and will always be. The king patted Eric on the shoulder and solemnly declared, in the future, if you need Wakanda's help for anything, please be sure to speak up. We will help. Eric breathed a sigh of relief and finally stopped being fooled. If he was asked to make it up again, he would be speechless. He grabbed the king's hand and shook it violently, like a revolutionary comrade who had only met so late. Your Majesty the King, I seem to really need Wakanda's help with something. Eric said sheepishly, as if he suddenly remembered. What is it? As long as Wakanda can do it, we will definitely help. King T'Chaka took care of everything. It's like this. 6 months ago, my father once rescued an old couple. They were in a car accident and were seriously injured. There was almost no chance of survival. My father took it upon himself to put them into the newly developed machine of our company. In the training warehouse, their lives were suspended, but it has been more than half a year, and the old couple still have not improved. Quote. Ariel showed a worried look at the right time. Due to the unexpected death of my father, our company has lost a lot of technical information on the cultivation warehouse. We only continue to maintain nutrition and energy supply. I am very worried that they will not last long. In that diary, I saw that Wakanda seemed to have a very high level of medical care, so I boldly asked His Majesty the King to save them. The king once again showed an unexpected expression. He thought Eric wanted to ask Wakanda for something, or that he wanted Wakanda to help him solve some trouble. But unexpectedly, he actually wanted Wakanda to help him. He saved an unrelated old couple. Eric, what a good guy. This friend is worth making. Of course, my friend. Where are they? Let's go and treat them now. Wakanda's medical technology can be said to be the best in the world, and we will definitely be able to cure them. King T'Chaka told his family the medical technology is very confident. Well, they were still in New York, and I didn't know if Wakanda was willing to help at the time, so. Eric showed an embarrassed expression, as if he was ashamed of his small-mindedness. Haha, okay, let's go to New York first. Don't worry, Wakanda's aircraft are also the best on Earth. 1 hour is enough for a trip. Eric was overjoyed, grabbed the king's hand and thanked him profusely. Afterwards, Eric flew to New York with 2 royal guards, moved Howard and his wife over, and sent them to the research center in Wakanda. Eric also followed. After so much effort, I was fooled until my mouth almost blistered, and I finally came in. Wakanda's research center is the forbidden area of Wakanda, second only to the vibranium mine. Except for royal family members and scientific researchers, no one else is allowed to enter. Even the leaders of the other 4 tribes cannot enter without the king's approval. And here is Eric's main purpose of coming to Wakanda. Vibranium technology is what Eric needs most urgently now. As for vibranium, Eric's current demand is not large, 100 or 200 pounds is enough, and this demand can also be obtained in the outside world. Don't forget that Wakanda has a history of thousands of years, and there are actually quite a few vibraniums that have been circulated. In the original history, Ulysses did not have Wakanda's internal response. His vibranium was almost all robbed from various museums. It is enough for Eric to use these vibranium products now. As for the future, the little golden leopard is his person, will he still lack vibranium? According to Wakanda's customs, the little golden leopard is qualified to compete for the throne. The battle for the throne will prohibit the use of the power of the heart-shaped grass, but it cannot prohibit the super soldier potion. As long as the little golden leopard grows up and can withstand the transformation of the medicine, and gives him an injection, the throne of Wakanda will be as easy as taking something out of a bag. Technology, vibranium, he wants it all. Wakanda will be his future raw material base and scientific research center. Clear the Wakanda dungeon and complete the task of escorting the prince home. The task reward is Wakanda's friendship. Entering the research center, Eric looked around curiously like Grandma Lu entering the Grand View Garden. Seeing his curiosity, the king called the director of the research center to explain to Eric. The director of the research center is also a member of the royal family. According to seniority, he is the cousin of King T'Chaka and the eldest princess of Wakanda. Sure enough, Wakanda's core technologies are all in the hands of women, and the men are a group of barbarians who only know how to fight. Eric asked a lot of questions, and the questions went from shallow to deep. At the beginning, King T'Chaka could interrupt from time to time, but after 2 or 3 questions, he could only watch. Afterwards, even the eldest princess had to think for a long time before she could answer. At this level, Eric had to shut up at the right time to save some face for others. At this point in time, the technological level of the Stark family is about 10 years ahead of the world, and S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra are about 20 years ahead. Wakanda's technology is relatively skewed. To put it roughly, it is 30 years ahead of the world, but Eric has technology that is 50 years ahead of the world. Eric, it turns out you are a genius. I didn't even see it, but you were able to stump my sister. It's amazing. King T'Chaka laughed excitedly, feeling very happy that Eric stumped his sister. Proud, apparently he was often ridiculed and scorned by his sister. The eldest princess's expression changed on the side, and her eyes towards King T'Chaka became more and more unkind. Eric laughed dryly and did not dare to answer. The group seemed very harmonious, and Eric played the role of a scientific genius entering a top laboratory vividly. But at the level of the magnetic field that ordinary people can't see, Eric has already seen all of Wakanda's core technological secrets. As early as when he first entered Wakanda, Eric secretly scanned a lot of Wakanda's technology: aircraft, vibranium-powered trains, invisible shields, vibranium laser spears. As long as it is a metal object, he can see it clearly in front of him, and Wakanda relies too much on vibranium, which completely exposes their technology to Eric's nose. There is only the research center. The protection here is very tight, including magnetic field shielding equipment. If he wants to scan the equipment here, Eric can't sense the situation inside from the outside, so he can only find a way to get in, otherwise he won't take the risk and move the Howards out. Vibranium technology is indeed unique. Eric digested these technologies carefully, combined with his advanced memory and powerful magnetic field ability, and he could come up with several new ideas every minute. Sure enough, my guess was correct. With Wakanda's technology, the next plan will be even more perfect. Your Majesty the King, Mr. Eric, we have preliminarily checked the conditions of the two patients. They are a little, special. A researcher walked over cautiously, holding a tablet in his hand, speaking hesitantly and hesitantly. Undecided. What's going on? Answer truthfully. King T'Chaka showed the majesty of his king and ordered the researcher to report the situation. Yes, Your Majesty. We have fully examined the two patients. They do not have any diseases. Their bodies have suffered serious trauma, but they have been cured. The researcher showed the tablet to the king, and Howard flashed on it. Inspection results. Then why don't they wake up? The eldest princess snatched the tablet and flipped through it quickly. Their cells are in a deep state of evolution, and until this evolution ends, they won't wake up. That's a special potion developed by my father. It can treat injuries and delay aging. Eric now feels that his decision to make up a father was really wise. If there is anything that cannot be explained, he should blame him. Just push it, there will be no proof anyway. Well, the only slightly embarrassing part is that I was so stupid that I gave my father the name, Charles. Is there a way to speed up this process? King T'Chaka felt that he was embarrassed in front of Eric. He just boasted that he would definitely be able to cure the Howards. The researcher glanced at the eldest princess cautiously and did not dare to answer. The eldest princess looked at the tablet for a long time and looked at Eric hesitantly. Eric suddenly realized, you want that potion, right? The researcher nodded hastily. Unfortunately, only my father knew the formula for that potion, and he passed away before he could teach me. Eric casually blamed Dad Charles for the super soldier potion. How could he hand it over? The eldest princess frowned and thought, sliding her fingers back and forth on the tablet, we can take some of their blood samples for reverse inference, but this will take a lot of time, and the chance of success is low. Is there no other way? Eric couldn't help but ask. The eldest princess slowly shook her head, there is no other way at the moment. We have tried every method we can think of, but none of them work. Even if the purest energy is injected, their cells are still resisting. Eric frowned. He didn't expect the Howard's problem to be so serious that even Wakanda's medical technology couldn't solve it. How long will it take for them to evolve? Preliminary estimate, it will take almost 10 years. The eldest princess frowned and gave a speechless figure. 10 years. It will be next century. Iron Man will be released soon. What evil have I done? When Eric heard this answer, he had the urge to hit a wall. Eric, leave them in Wakanda. We will definitely find a solution. King T'Chaka patted Eric on the shoulder and solemnly promised that he had hit himself too hard today and had to save his face. That's all I can do. Eric shook his head helplessly and left Howard and his wife in Wakanda. As the ruler of a country, King T'Chaka has been traveling around the world for many years and has met important figures from many countries. He naturally knows the Starks, but he was very wise not to ask in detail. Everyone has their own secrets, Wakanda has them, and Eric has them too. Since he wants to save the Starks, Wakanda will help him save them. There is no harm in this kind of thing, only benefits. If the cure is successful, Wakanda will not only fulfill its promise to Eric, but will also gain the friendship of the Stark family. This is very important political capital. With the influence of the Stark family in the United States, even if Wakanda is exposed to the world in the future, with the help of the Stark family, Wakanda will have more room for maneuver. Eric left Wakanda alone, with a bag of vibranium on his back, about 100 pounds. This was forced upon him by King T'Chaka before he left, to express his apology for not being able to help. There were 3 people when they came, but he was the only one when he left. In order to deal with Jennifer's questioning, Eric made up a lot of lies, such as the bodyguard met his former comrade in arms on the grassland and resigned on the spot to go hunting, and the servant found his long-lost parents in a small village and stayed on the grassland. Eric made up a lot of lies to fool Jennifer, and he couldn't help but sigh inwardly that a lie really needs more lies to cover it up. Jennifer, the product launch conference will be held in 2 hours. We have a new product. Eric came out of the laboratory with his messy long hair and shouted to his assistant to the president at the top of his lungs. His clothes were so greasy that the original color could no longer be seen clearly. His body smelled bad, and he hadn't taken a shower for an unknown amount of time. 6 months ago, Eric returned to New York from Wakanda. As soon as he came back, he plunged into the laboratory and never came out. If he hadn't brought him food every day, Jennifer would have thought something had happened to him. The harvest from half a year of retreat research is huge. The first is the upgrade of the cold jade bed. The cold jade bed is integrated with vibranium. Its anti-strike ability has reached a new level, and the energy it can withstand has also been greatly enhanced. It will no longer be blown to pieces by Eric like last time. Moreover, the strengthening of the Han jade bed allows it to be given more powerful functions, such as foreign object fusion. This is technology from the universe of Emperor Thanos. The Sentinel robot, a mutant's nightmare, was invented by the dwarf scientist Glass Val Trask. It uses Mystique's genes as a model and combines them with other materials to create a super robot that can perfectly display various superpowers. Magneto has been fighting against the Sentinel robots for many years and has done a lot of research on them. This technology of fusion of cells and other substances has long been cracked by him, but unfortunately, he has not had the opportunity to use it. Now, this technology is attached to the cold jade bed by Eric in preparation for future strengthening plans. To this end, he also specially experimented with vibranium. He fused 1 pound of vibranium with himself. The effect is very good. Different from the Sentinel robot's mode that cannot be separated after fusion, Eric, as Magneto, also has absolute control over the vibranium integrated into his body. He can divide or make peace with just a thought. Between 1 pound of vibranium is about the size of an egg. After fusion with Eric, the vibranium molecules were evenly distributed in Eric's cells, increasing Eric's ability to resist attacks several times. After separation, the vibranium turned into a liquid state. In this state, Eric could control it more easily. It took Eric 5.5 months to upgrade the Hanyu bed and integrate it with Junyun. In the remaining half a month, Eric successfully developed a new product, the ultraviolet shielding device. The reason for rushing to hold a product launch conference. Ultraviolet shielding instrument, as the name suggests, is an instrument that specifically shields ultraviolet rays. This thing was made by Eric into the size of a lighter. It has multiple gears to choose from. It can form a special magnetic field within 1 meter of the instrument and filter ultraviolet rays within 1 meter. It is really a must-have for beauty-loving girls when traveling at home. Prepared things. Don't underestimate this simple function. This was invented by Eric based on Wakanda's invisibility technology and his own powers. The technology is at least 20 years ahead of the world. Jennifer arrived quickly, covered her nose, took the information from Eric's hand, and pushed him into the bathroom. After half a year of sleepless research, Eric finally confirmed one thing. It turns out that research is really addictive. An hour later, Eric was dressed neatly and appeared in front of Jennifer again. The beautiful assistant to the president had already read the information. She frowned and was a little confused. "Mr. Eric, why do you want to study such an unknown person?" "Something useful." "Oh. It's useless. How could it be?" Eric asked casually while playing with his newly cut hair. Ultraviolet shielding device, to put it bluntly, is a sunscreen for girls. Do you think anyone will really buy this thing? Jennifer closed the document and gently placed it on the table. The aesthetics of European and American women generally think of wheat. A healthy complexion is the most attractive. Many women even go to a sun spa or go to the beach to bask in the sun just for the sake of their skin color. This device of yours can be said to be completely contrary to women's aesthetics. How could it be possible? Anyone buys it. At least I won't. After hearing this, Eric chuckled. There is no market in Europe and the United States, so we will sell it to Asia. I believe Asian women will like it very much. Mr. Eric, our maglev train is on the right track, and we will hold a product launch soon. Don't you think we should put this first? The assistant to the president is very responsible for her work, and for Eric she was very dissatisfied with Kay's behavior that was detrimental to the company's interests. Jennifer, this thing is very important to me, even more than the maglev train. Eric became extremely serious and looked at Jennifer seriously. So, in an hour, the product launch will be held. Well, you are the boss, you have the final say. Jennifer shrugged helplessly and left to prepare for the press conference. There is almost no market for ultraviolet shielding devices in Europe and the United States. Of course Eric understands this, but he must do it because this thing is just a bait. In order to catch big fish, he will do it even if he loses money. The product launch conference was held soon, and many media were very enthusiastic about Alice Industries' first product. They all learned from their respective channels that Alice Industries was developing a maglev train. They took it for granted that this conference should be the stepping stone to the maglev train. Unfortunately, they were destined to be disappointed. When Eric stood on the stage and proudly introduced the UV shielding device, all the media were dumbfounded. What is this? Does this thing have anything to do with maglev trains? Will anyone buy this silly thing? This CEO is a fool. Countless questions hovered in the minds of many reporters. They watched Eric eloquently and spitting on the stage. The executives of Alice Industries were also dumbfounded. They couldn't understand what was wrong with their boss. He actually failed at such a critical moment. What a pig teammate. The product launch conference ended quickly, and the stupid behavior of the president of Alice Industries was quickly reported. Many bold media even publicly ridiculed Eric's IQ, saying that Alice Industries would be ruined by its stupid president sooner or later. And our stupid president Mr. Eric, because of his unusual concern for women's skin problems, was given a very funny nickname by the media, Friend of Women. For a period of time, there was always news about Mr. Eric, Friend of Women, in the newspapers. Of course, it was all one-sided ridicule and contempt. This phenomenon continued until the more explosive news that Alexander Pierce refused to accept the Nobel Peace Prize was alleviated. Eric didn't care about these. He sat in the office, holding a cup of coffee in one hand and a newspaper in the other, looking at the photo of Alexander Pierce in the newspaper, revealing a charming smile. Alexander, the bait has been put down, it depends on when you will bite the hook. January 1, 1993, New Year's Day, Alice Industrial. After several months, Alice Industrial held another product launch conference, and the product launch this time was the highly anticipated maglev train. The conference was packed with people. Not only did the major media arrive on time, but also many representatives from the relevant government departments came, and the major railway companies and technology companies were waiting outside the door early. Eric stood in front of the CEO's office window and looked out. Stark Industries, Hammer Industries, Avant-Garde Technologies, Roxxon Oil, BNSF, NASA. A lot of people came, including those who should come and those who shouldn't come. Eric finally found his old friend, the long-haired Nick Fury, in the crowd. Next to him was a somewhat restrained young man. Seeing the young man's hairline, Eric laughed. Long time no see, Coulson. The press conference was still the same. First, they ridiculed the transportation methods and travel speeds in today's world, and then praised their own maglev trains for being fast, safe, environmentally friendly, and cost-saving. In the press release that Eric read, trains, planes, ships, subways, cars, and all other means of transportation were devalued to the point that they couldn't even follow the maglev trains and eat dust. All media recorded what they should record and recorded what they should record. Anyway, they broadcast whatever Eric said. If something really happened in the future, Alice Industries would be blamed, not them. The major railway companies were not happy. Their own territory that they had operated for many years was about to be occupied. No one would be happy. Many representatives were thinking about how to trip up Alice Industries. But at the press conference, they all kept quiet. They were all well-known figures, and they still had to maintain their basic face. The 2-hour press conference ended quickly. The major media and company representatives moved to the restaurant to attend the banquet. There was a more important event in the afternoon, the trial run of the maglev train. Eric held a glass of wine and interspersed between the bigwigs, dealing with questions from all sides. He knew everything about the maglev train, but once it came to room temperature superconducting materials and Lancier No. 1, Eric would smile and say nothing. In fact, everyone knows that the construction technology of maglev trains is not difficult. Any high-tech company can develop it. The real difficulty lies in the room temperature superconducting material, which is a substance recognized by the scientific community as impossible to exist, but now it has been synthesized by Alice Industry. 99% of the companies and forces that came to the press conference came for this. Eric, long time no see. Nick Fury came over with the newbie Coulson and stretched out his hand from a distance. Eric smiled and shook hands with Nick Fury. Fury, long time no see. I heard that you were transferred to the headquarters. What's wrong? Are you uncomfortable living in New York? Don't mention it, New York is too noisy. So I applied to be transferred to the headquarters to do clerical work. Nick Fury frowned and made an ear-picking gesture, and pointed to the newbie Coulson next to him. Let me introduce you to my new subordinate, Coulson, a very good young man. Hello, Mr. Eric. Coulson's smile is indeed very friendly, making people feel that he is a good person at first glance. Eric's eyes lit up immediately. This kind of smile must be learned, it is too deceptive. Hello, Coulson, is your Strategic Homeland Defense Attack and Logistics Support Agency also interested in maglev trains? Nick Fury shrugged and said helplessly, it's just routine. The director said that such an important gathering must have someone on site to watch. I happened to be free, so I came. Well, I thought you came to see an old friend. Eric pretended to be sad. Nick Fury laughed and said, come on, Eric, I'm not those little girls, don't try this. Haha, have fun, I'll go over there and take a look. Eric smiled and patted Nick Fury's arm, pointing to another group of people. Nick Fury looked over and saw a bald fat man talking there. He immediately nodded in understanding and made a gesture of invitation. Eric walked towards the bald fat man. When the bald fat man saw Eric, he stretched out his palm from a distance, his fat face squeezed into a chrysanthemum, and laughed. Haha, Mr. Eric, you are finally here. Mr. Obade. I didn't expect Stark Industries to be so kind as to attend my small press conference. Eric looked surprised, as if he was very surprised by his arrival. Oh, don't say that. Mr. Eric is young and promising. He can actually invent room temperature superconducting materials. This is something that even Tony can't handle. In the future, Alice Industries will definitely have great potential. Don't say that. Alice Industries is just a small company. How can it compare to Stark Industries? The two started the business flattery mode, and they almost flattered each other to the sky. Many reporters did not forget their own jobs and took pictures. They even thought of the headlines of the reports in their minds. Obade and Eric met enthusiastically, and Stark Industries may have reached a secret agreement with Alice Industries. Eric, do you want to relax at my place tonight? I have invited a few models to come over, and they have great bodies. Obade leaned close to Eric and whispered in a voice that only the two of them could hear, with a look in his eyes that all men could understand. Eric smiled immediately and gave a look that said, you know me, that's great, I just designed a few sets of clothes and need models to try them on. Oh, what a coincidence, I also have a few sets of clothes to try, so, it's settled, how about 8 o'clock tonight? Obade put his arm around Eric's shoulders, like two old friends. Okay, it's settled, 8. Eric hadn't finished his words when a light cry suddenly interrupted him from behind. Mr. Eric, there's something urgent, you'd better come over. It was Jennifer, she looked a little anxious. Eric frowned and turned around. What's going on? Can't you see that I'm discussing something with Mr. Obade? Haha, Eric, don't lose your temper with a beautiful woman, it's not gentlemanly. Obade smiled and patted Eric's shoulder. You do your thing first, I'll contact you later. Mr. Obade, I'm really sorry, I'll be back soon. Eric nodded apologetically and asked Jennifer to lead the way with a fierce face. Jennifer, what's going on? Coming to a corner where no one was, Eric resumed his glib tone. How could he be unhappy at all? Jennifer couldn't care about these things now. She looked around and made sure that there was no one around. Then she leaned close to Eric's ear and said, General Ross wants to see you. General Ross. What is he doing here? And why can't he come openly? Why is he so mysterious? Eric pouted in dissatisfaction. I don't know. He doesn't seem to want people to know that he is here. He just wants me to invite you over. Eric raised his eyebrows. What does this mean? Where is he? The underground garage. Alas, I'm going to be busy soon. I've taken on more than 80 tasks. General Ross, Happy New Year. How about a drink? Eric sat in General Ross's car calmly, holding whiskey in one hand and 2 glasses in the other. General Ross did not respond to him, but knocked on the driver's backrest. The driver understood, turned on a jammer, and raised the soundproofing board in the car. Eric frowned. The jammer interfered with electronic equipment and emitted waves of chaotic electromagnetic waves, which made him feel very uncomfortable. Mr. Eric, on behalf of the Ministry of Defense, I hope to reach a cooperation with Alice Industries. General Ross still did not smile, and took out a document expressionlessly. Eric took the material, flipped through it briefly, and his eyes lit up. This is a weapon design drawing, which is very simple and has no technical content. Individual electromagnetic gun. A concept that is difficult to realize. If it is manufactured according to the method in the design drawing, then this individual electromagnetic gun will weigh at least 100 kilograms. If the weight is reduced, the power of the electromagnetic gun will be insufficient. The military wants Alice Industries to improve this weapon. Eric closed the blueprint and poured a glass of wine for General Ross. Yes, Alice Industries has developed room temperature superconducting materials, which makes it possible for this weapon to be manufactured. We hope that Alice Industries can cooperate with the military to manufacture this weapon. General Ross took the wine, but did not drink it. He held it in his hand and stared at Eric. If you can succeed, then Alice Industries will become another major customer of the military in the future. By then, the orders will definitely not only be single-soldier electromagnetic guns, but also ship-borne electromagnetic guns, aircraft-borne electromagnetic guns, electromagnetic gun tanks. After listening, Eric was surprised. General Ross, this is a good thing, of course we Alice Industries are willing. But I don't understand why we choose Alice Industries. This kind of thing, as long as you buy Lancier number 1 from our company, it is actually not difficult to make it. General Ross was silent for a moment and said, I recommended you to the Ministry of Defense. Why? Eric was extremely puzzled. He and General Ross met for the first time and had no relationship at all. Why would he be so kind? I have an experiment that requires a lot of room temperature superconducting materials. Experiment. Eric's heart moved. It seems that General Ross is obsessed with only one experiment, right? What kind of experiment is it? Don't ask what you shouldn't ask. General Ross glared, his beard slightly raised, and swallowed the wine in his hand. Eric shrugged and poured him another glass. This experiment requires a lot of funds, and the Ministry of Defense will never approve it. General Ross said, and touched Eric's glass with his own. Got it. Eric understood immediately. Help him launder money. General Ross, I understand what you mean. Eric smiled and drank his wine. We will accept the order from the Ministry of Defense, but please tell the Ministry of Defense that the development of individual electromagnetic guns is very expensive, which will consume a large amount of Lancier number 1, and the price of Lancier number 1 is very expensive. Haha, very good, happy cooperation. General Ross nodded with satisfaction and raised the glass in his hand. Happy cooperation. Eric smiled and clinked their glasses together, making a crisp sound. General Ross, I have another weapon here, I wonder if you are interested. After drinking, Eric suddenly remembered something. General Ross was a little surprised. He had never heard that Alice Industries had a weapons department. He came here to ask Eric to add such a department to help him launder money, but how did Eric mean that they already had research results? Sonic weapons. Eric thought of the sonic gun he got from Ulysses. Remove the fancy function of deformation, and then find a way to replace the vibranium component inside. It won't be a problem to copy it. Oh, how powerful. General Ross didn't care what type of weapon it was, he only cared about the power. First class. From non-lethal weapons to missile level, the power can be adjusted by itself, and it is continuous damage, zero pollution, only consumes electricity, and can be reused. Eric recalled the scene of the green fat being blown away by the sonic weapon in his mind, and listed its benefits one by one. The more General Ross listened, the brighter his eyes became. He finally agreed that the military would purchase individual electromagnetic guns and sonic weapons from Alice Industries. At the same time, he personally invested and bought 10 tons of Lancier from Eric at cost price. Eric staggered back to the company and found that the banquet was over. There were few people in the whole company. I think they should go to the test site to participate in the test ceremony of the maglev train. General Ross has 3 hobbies: smoking, drinking, and arguing with Hulk. Today, Eric finally saw his hobby of drinking. My goodness, the two of them just drank it like that. After a bottle of whiskey, the two of them were fine. Eric had injected the super soldier potion, and the alcohol decomposed as soon as it entered his stomach, but General Ross relied entirely on his huge capacity. After drinking a bottle of whiskey, General Ross was hooked on the alcohol bug. He opened the wine cabinet in the car and took out one bottle after another until he got drunk. In order to appear less fake, Eric poured half a bottle of brandy on himself and deliberately staggered as if he was about to pass out. Eric habitually turned on the magnetic field induction, and instantly became alert. Someone was prying into his safe. Eric was not angry, but very happy. Really, I am not saying this in a sarcastic way. He was really very happy. He thought that Alexander Pierce must have sent someone here. The old finally took the bait. The UV shielding device was the first product released by Alice Industries. Eric even took on the elegant title of Friend of Women for this. This thing was actually made by Eric specifically for Alexander to see. It can shield ultraviolet rays, and naturally it can also shield visible light. Aerospace aircraft carrier, Insight plan, this is the technology that Alexander urgently needs. Why did Eric have to go to Wakanda before doing this? It was because Hydra could not crack Wakanda's technology. If it was just to make a device to shield ultraviolet rays, Eric could do it in minutes with his supernatural powers and advanced scientific knowledge. However, it would be easily cracked by Hydra. With the addition of Wakanda's vibranium technology, the incident was different. The core component of the UV shielding device has become an alloy that can release a special magnetic field, and the most critical raw material of this alloy is vibranium. Special vibranium alloy, plus Wakanda's magnetic field control technology, Hydra can't crack it no matter how advanced its technology is. Finally here, let me see who Alexander sent over. Posted a thread. If you have any opinions or suggestions, you can go there to raise them, just don't be too harsh. Eric's feet slowly left the ground, flew silently off the ground, and slowly flew towards the thief. The door of his CEO's office was ajar, and no sound could be heard from inside. Eric couldn't help but sigh. This thief, his skills are really good. Eric controlled the magnetic field to distort the light, and his figure disappeared in the air, like a ghost, slowly flying in. Hey, the man in black. Eric quietly landed behind the thief and watched her pick the lock with relish. That's right, this thief is a woman. She was wrapped in a layer of black tight combat uniform, which made her exquisite body look more plump. She also wore a black hood on her head, so Eric couldn't see her face. As for the safe, Eric was not worried. The safe he designed was not something that ordinary people could open. From the outside, the safe was similar to a normal safe, with a password disk and keyhole. The password disk also made a click when it turned, just like a normal safe. But from the inside of the safe, the combination disk and the keyhole have nothing to do with the box. A real lock can only be opened from the inside. He was even more crazy and added a layer of vibranium coating on the surface of the safe. The most unbearable thing is that there is nothing in the safe. That's right, the safe is empty. That stupid thief is just busying there for nothing, playing tricks on Eric. From this safe, you can see how wicked Eric is. The old man is very bad. The thief was very patient. She squatted on the ground and pried for more than 10 minutes. The safe didn't respond at all, but she didn't give up. She kept turning it around. Eric watched for more than 10 minutes and was a little bored. He couldn't help yawning. The thief on the ground heard the sound, jumped up instantly, and kicked in Eric's direction. Eric moved his body slightly, dodged the kick, grabbed her ankle, and threw her out with a flick of his hand. This move also destroyed the electromagnetic field he arranged, exposing his figure. The thief had excellent balance. He turned half a circle in the air, landed on his feet, and threw two button battery-like things to Eric with one hand on his waist. The two small things collided in the air, emitting a few dazzling electric lights. Eric chuckled and waved his hand to knock down the two small things. He had already guessed who it was, but he didn't plan to catch her so quickly. After all, she was a famous beauty, so he had to have fun with her, right? Eric jumped up. His body was faster than a few meters away, and punched the thief hard. The thief rolled on the ground to avoid the thundering blow. At the same time, he exerted force on his feet, kicked against the wall, and then hid under the desk with the reverse thrust. Eric would not feel sorry for a table. He grabbed a corner of the table and flipped it to the ground with a little force. The thief under the table was well prepared. At the moment the table was opened, he shot 2 darts at Eric. The darts flashed with bursts of blue light, which were obviously small toys with electricity. Hey, so you like this tune? Then let's have some fun later. Eric smiled evilly, took the 2 darts in his hand, and threw them back. The thief did not answer, dodged the darts, took out a dagger from his leg, held it in his hand, and made a fighting posture. Eric smiled and shook his head, hooked his finger at her. Come on, ladies first. The thief snorted coldly and attacked with a dagger. The small dagger flashed with cold light, like a flying butterfly in the air, heading towards Eric's vital parts. Eric was like walking in a garden, with his hands behind his back, but he only moved his feet slightly, and he could dodge the dagger every time. Seeing that such an attack could not even touch the corner of Eric's clothes, the thief knew that his speed could not keep up with Eric, so he immediately changed his strategy. While forcing Eric back with a dagger, he suddenly threw a small thing at Eric with his other hand, and then immediately retreated. Eric casually grabbed the gadget in his hand, weighed it up and down, and said with a smile, I haven't figured it out yet. This thing doesn't work on me. Oh, are you sure? The thief spoke for the first time, and the seductive voice came from under the mask, as charming as if it could seduce people's souls. As soon as the thief finished speaking, the gadget in Eric's hand suddenly exploded, and a ball of gray powder sprinkled Eric all over. Isn't it electric? Why didn't you remind me? Eric was embarrassed, he was careless. He is the dignified Magneto, but he was actually tricked by someone with a metal weapon. If this matter is told to others, who would believe it? But who is to blame for this? It's his own arrogance that he even turned off the magnetic field induction. The thief smiled triumphantly, his voice was charming. This is my newly configured hallucinogen, how does it taste? Just as Eric was about to move, he suddenly felt dizzy in his head, and his hands and feet were a little out of control. Eric was shocked immediately. What kind of poison is this? It was so powerful that even his super physique injected with super soldier potion felt uncomfortable. The thief would not give him any chance. Seeing that Eric was affected, he jumped over lightly and stabbed Eric's thigh with the dagger in his hand. Ding! The dagger made a sound of metal when it came into contact with Eric's skin. The thief was stunned at first, then immediately threw away the dagger, and flexibly wrapped his legs around Eric's neck and bent it down fiercely. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. If it were an ordinary person, after this set of moves, I'm afraid he would have fallen to the ground, locked by the throat, unable to move. Unfortunately, Eric is not an ordinary person. After being strengthened by the super soldier potion and the magnetic field of Magneto, his physical fitness has surpassed Captain America. The thief's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu did not have any effect. Eric did not even shake. At this time, his super physique had completely eliminated the effects of the hallucinogens and his mind was clear again. Eric's face turned black. It was too embarrassing. He couldn't play anymore. He reached out and grabbed the thief's neck and lifted her up with one hand. The mask was taken off, and a pretty face appeared in front of Eric. The little face was red due to lack of oxygen, and the brown-red hair was flying in the air. Natasha Romanoff, the famous Black Widow, disappeared without a trace after the rebellion in the Red House. How did she come to me? Eric looked at Natasha playfully, and his fingers played with her hair. Natasha had not given up yet. She took out a thin steel needle from somewhere and stabbed Eric's eyes. Eric just looked at her, the needle stopped steadily 1 centimeter away from him, unable to move forward any further. Haha, are you surprised? Are you surprised? Eric laughed meanly. You're kidding me. Natasha said this with difficulty, and then fainted due to lack of oxygen. Hee, I'm just kidding you. Eric threw Natasha on the sofa, and was still worried. He sent an electromagnetic pulse close to her forehead, causing her to fall into a deep coma, and then cleared all the broken items on her body, and then he breathed a sigh of relief. Looking at Natasha's graceful body on the sofa, Eric felt a little dry in the mouth. By the way, what can you do after catching the Black Widow alive? Online, very urgent. What can you do after catching the Black Widow alive? Unfortunately, what everyone wanted to see did not happen. Eric simply interrogated her, took a tube of blood for research, and then tied her up in the laboratory and left her alone. Eric, what do you want me to do? I'm helpless too. I also want to do something, but the policy doesn't allow it. At 8 o'clock in the evening, Eric came to Stark Industries on time. Obadiah was sitting on the sofa, surrounded by beautiful women. From time to time, beautiful women would feed him a piece of fruit and pour him a glass of wine. He looked so comfortable. On the other side, a young man was playing billiards with two beauties, causing the beauties to cheer from time to time. This was Tony Stark, the future Iron Man, and now the most famous playboy in New York. Hi, Eric, you're here at the right time. Come here, I just mentioned you to the beauties. Obadiah greeted warmly, with a few red lip marks on his bright forehead, which actually looked a bit enchanting. Eric walked over with a smile, but Tony Stark suddenly walked over and stood in front of him. Unfortunately, Stark was almost 5 centimeters shorter than Eric, which forced Stark to raise his head slightly. Only when he could look at Eric did his momentum weaken. Stark immediately noticed this embarrassing situation, quietly stood on tiptoes, and looked at Eric. Hey, man, are you the guy playing with magnets? Eric smiled immediately, looked at his tiptoes, and smiled happily. Yes, that's right, I'm the guy playing with magnets. Seeing that Eric noticed his little move, Stark shrugged, stretched out his hand above his head to compare the height of the two of them, and stamped his feet on the ground. It's because the floor is uneven. In fact, we are almost the same. I'll have someone fix this thing later. The floor. Nice to meet you, Mr. Stark. Eric smiled and extended his hand. Stark looked embarrassed, but still shook hands with him, then immediately withdrew, muttering in a low voice, I'm not very happy. Haha, Eric, don't mind, Tony doesn't like shaking hands with men, you know. Obadiah came over with a beautiful woman in his arms, smiling to smooth things over for the two of them. What would you like to drink? Obadiah snapped his fingers and called a waiter. Martini, with gin, no vodka, stir for 10 seconds, and add a little unopened delicious wine, thank you. Stark curled his lips and said, what a sissy. No, he's a gentleman. Eric drew his right hand twice in front of him, bowed slightly, and gracefully extended his palm to the beautiful woman next to Obadiah. The beautiful woman had obviously learned etiquette lessons, and gently put his right hand on his hand. In Eric's hands. Eric kissed her slowly and gave a very gentlemanly kiss on the hand. Okay, two geniuses, how about we sit down and have a drink with the beauties? Obadiah once again smoothed things over. He knew Stark's character very well and knew that his genius nephew was extremely arrogant. Now Rek got a lot of limelight in front of the media, which made Stark a little dissatisfied, or jealous. Lucy, or Anna, okay, maybe Amanda, whatever your name is, bring me a glass of vodka. Stark pointed at a beautiful woman and asked her to pour the wine. He called several names but still couldn't remember it. What is the name of this beauty? The beauty frowned with dissatisfaction, but she still went to pour the wine obediently. Eric shook his head slightly, feeling that Stark was a bit naive. He didn't think Stark could get used to drinking vodka. This was completely against him. Accompanied by beautiful women, the three of them temporarily put the unpleasantness behind them and had fun, singing, dancing, billiards, poker. When he got excited, Stark even started playing golf indoors, with the goal of buying a bottle of famous wine worth tens of thousands of dollars, which made Eric feel bad just watching. The three of them had a blast for several hours, and several beauties fell to the ground drunk. Taking advantage of his drunkenness, Obadiah clapped his hands and called several waiters to come in. All female creatures, whether standing or lying down, were carried out. Okay, Eric, Ruth and Annie have been sent to your room. You can enjoy the evening, hee hee hee. Obadiah put his arm around Eric's shoulders and smiled very obscenely. That's great. I haven't had enough fun just now. Eric responded with an expression that every man would understand, his eyes a little blurry. Hey, man, I made the reservation for Annie first. We just played golf together. Stark drank a lot and his mind was already a little unclear. He just said a few words and fell on the sofa. Ha ha ha. Stark, not only are you taller, your ability to drink is not as good as mine. Eric pointed at Stark and laughed wildly. Unfortunately, Stark couldn't hear him because he was already asleep. Obadiah looked at the slightly drunk Eric, the corners of his mouth slightly raised, and in an instant he returned to his drunken state. He patted Stark's thigh hard. Tony is really not good, haha, he has been drunk for a long time. But the beauty is in front, and he is embarrassed to fall. Haha, Tony Stark, you lost. Eric looked proud, pointing at Stark and laughing, his eyes becoming more and more blurred. Yes, Eric, you won. Not only did you beat Tony in terms of drinking, but you also beat him in intelligence. Room temperature superconducting materials, my god. I really don't know how you made them. Obadiah said. Still a little drunk at the time, he sat next to Eric with a clear face and poured him another glass of wine. Hee, that's my most proud work. Eric squinted his eyes and drank the wine in the glass. I tell you, if you want to create normal temperature superconducting materials, the most important thing is the place is to go inside, burp. Ah. When it came to the key point, Eric suddenly burped, then felt nauseous and began to vomit violently. Large amounts of undigested food and wine mixed with stomach acid sprayed hotly on Obaday's face. WTF. Obaday cursed, pushed Eric away, and rushed to the bathroom, but just after taking a step, he turned back and pulled Eric's collar and asked, what is the most important part? Yes, it must be stirred clockwise, otherwise, it will, burp. Eric burped again, his eyelids drooped, and he fell asleep. Stir clockwise. What the hell? Obaday kicked Eric in a rage, but his shoes were also stained with Eric's vomit, which made him feel nauseous again, and he hurried to the bathroom. Someone, take Mr. Eric to his guest room, and tell Ruth and Annie to treat him well. Obaday cleaned himself up in the bathroom, shouting at the door, 2 more people, take Tony back. Haha, what a pity, I can't write what everyone wants to see the most. No one will beat me up, will they? Eric sat at the head of the bed, looking at the 2 unconscious beauties on the bed, and shook his head slightly. Obaday really took great pains to get the secret of room temperature superconducting materials. He failed to force her to drink, and he actually played the honey trap again. What a pity. From all the signs, Stark should not know Obaday's purpose. Well, with his arrogant character, he would definitely not agree to do this. So, the whole thing was Obaday's idea. Haha, this old man is very bad. Eric got up and poured himself another glass of wine. This is the benefit of the super soldier potion. No matter how much wine he drinks, it will turn into water and carbon dioxide in his stomach. The worst one is not Obaday, but that boiled egg. He is not bald yet, but he is already so mean. Eric drank the wine in the glass with gnashing teeth. I thought Natasha was sent by Alexander, but I didn't expect it was sent by you, a mean guy. I was so happy for nothing. That's right, Black Widow Natasha was sent by Nick Fury, and it is also a room temperature superconducting material, which has nothing to do with the UV shielding device. I didn't expect these 2 guys to hook up so early. No, I have to quickly recruit Barton. The benefits can't be taken by boiled egg alone. Hawkeye Barton, this person is very important in Eric's heart, not because of his strength, nor because of his identity or other messy things, but because this guy is lucky. Don't believe it. During the New York battle, Barton was present, and the Avengers won. During the battle against Ultron, Barton was present, and the Avengers won again. During the Civil War, Barton stood on Captain America's side, and Captain America won. During the first battle against Thanos, Barton was not present, and the Avengers were defeated. Thanos snapped his fingers, and Barton's family disappeared, but he was fine. During the second battle against Thanos, Barton was present, and Thanos died. Although it was a bit far-fetched, Eric really felt that Barton was a mascot with very good luck. To put it in a more mysterious way, he had great luck. The next morning, Eric got up early and wandered around Stark Industries, with his magnetic field induction fully turned on and his eyes flashing with excitement. Obaday's choice of the location inside Stark Industries was really the biggest mistake. Eric, did you have a good time last night? Obaday greeted Eric from a distance. He was still wearing pajamas, holding a wine glass in one hand and a cigar in the other. Don't mention it. I drank too much last night and slept like a dead pig. What are you doing here, Obaday? You are so mean. You actually made me drink so much. Eric was full of regret and complained to Obaday. Haha, you can't blame me for this. It's because you can't drink much. Obadiah put his arm around his shoulders and winked. I'll send those two girls home for you. Have fun for a few days, how about that? Eric's eyes lit up immediately, like a dog seeing meat bones, but then he looked embarrassed again. Forget it. If I really do this, Jennifer will kill me. This is why he hired a beautiful woman as an assistant. In this situation, she is a perfect shield. Oh, your CEO assistant. Well, she has a good figure. I understand. Obadiah took a deep puff of the cigar. Then how about this? I'll give you their contact information, you can find the time yourself. That's great, you still understand me. Eric and Obadiah smiled at each other, looking like a traitor. Let's go have breakfast first, Tony should be up soon. Eric, are you saying that General Ross recommended Alice Industries to the Department of Defense? Are you sure I heard it right? Just after breakfast, before they had a few words, Eric took the initiative to break this explosive news, making Obadiah wonder if there was something wrong with his ears. Of course, room temperature superconducting materials are products of Alice Industries. We have more complete technology. Perhaps General Ross and the Department of Defense also considered this reason, so they handed over the development of the electromagnetic gun series of weapons to Alice Industries. But Stark Industries has provided weapons and equipment to the military for decades. In terms of weapon development, no one can compare with us. If Alice Industries and Stark Industries cooperate, I believe we can definitely make better weapons. Obadiah was still trying to persuade Eric, his eyebrows were tightly frowned, and his saliva was flying. He really didn't expect that General Ross would come out halfway and actually intercepted him. Obadiah, my friend, you should know that the electromagnetic gun series of weapons will be the stepping stone for our Alice Industries to enter the arms market. We can't let it go. Eric spread his hands in embarrassment. No room for cooperation. Obadiah sat back on the sofa and took a big puff of his cigar. Hey, man, I can buy materials from you and then develop them myself. I believe we will definitely develop the electromagnetic gun series of weapons faster than Alice Industries. Tony Stark lay on the sofa and ate a cheeseburger with a nonchalant look on his face. He was very confident in his IQ. Eric laughed immediately. Of course I know this, Mr. Stark, your IQ is unquestionable. But if you really do this, then we have to limit the number of shipments of Lancier number 1. Then I will buy Alice Industries. Stark swallowed the last bit of burger in a few bites and chewed it hard. I'm afraid you can't do that, Mr. Stark. Alice Industries is not on the market yet, it belongs entirely to me. Eric shrugged and disdained Stark's threat. The room suddenly became quiet, and the atmosphere was a little frozen. Eric suddenly smiled. Obadiah, Mr. Stark, I think we can cooperate in other areas. Oh, what areas? Are you concerned about women's skin problems? Stark Industries does not produce cosmetics. Mr. Friend of Women. Stark pouted in disdain. No, I want to talk about metal prostheses. Eric didn't care about Stark's ridicule. He took out a photo from his pocket and put it in front of the two. In the photo, it was the metal arm of the Winter Soldier. Of course, all traces of Hydra or the former Soviet Union were erased by Eric. Stark picked up the photo and raised his eyebrows. You want us to make this kind of toy? This is not a toy, Mr. Stark. This arm can give the user tons of power. Eric stretched out his hand and clenched his fist, and his biceps bulged high under his clothes. Every year, tens of thousands of soldiers in the US military are injured, and most of them will be disabled. This group of people includes soldiers, non-commissioned officers, lieutenants, colonels, and even generals. Many of them will continue to stay in the barracks to hold important positions. They returned from the battlefield, but left their legs or arms there. They have honor. The government will pay a lot of pensions every year, they have money. Moreover, society pays great attention to them, and every small matter related will be reported a lot. We have money, power, honor, and society pays enough attention, why don't we do it? Eric snatched the photo from Stark's hand. This prosthesis can not only allow them to return to normal life, but also make them stronger. This is a prosthesis, but also a weapon. Obadiah smiled with satisfaction. Then, let's talk about cooperation. Obadiah's cooperation was within Eric's expectations. He was a qualified businessman who would not only focus on the immediate interests. He saw the potential behind this prosthesis. Americans have always lacked a sense of security, even soldiers. They shed tears and blood for this country, and even lost their basic mobility. They are even more insecure. They are afraid that the military will abandon them, the government will abandon them, and the society will abandon them. If there is a product that can make them stand up again, they will definitely flock to it and will get it at all costs. Killian of Pioneer Technology seized this point and let a large number of disabled soldiers willingly participate in his desperate virus experiment for free. This is a product that the military will definitely buy. Even if it is sold at a high price of $5 million, the military will still bite its teeth and buy it. This is not a business, but a matter of military morale. Of course, he can't sell it so expensively, the price is about the same. The real value of this thing lies in the goodwill it has gained from the military and the large amount of political capital it can add to Stark Industries. As for Tony Stark, he didn't care how much this thing could sell for. In his opinion, whether he was worth 80 billion or 100 billion was just a different number and would not bring him any changes. The only thing he cared about was what inspiration this thing could bring him. For him, the metal prosthesis was just a small toy. As long as he was given time, he could develop it himself. He just didn't focus on it. The only function of this small toy was to stimulate his brain and bring him new inspiration. Eric returned to the company, interrogated Natasha again, and cleared a small amount of her memory, and then let her go. What else could he do if he didn't let her go? Would he tear his face with the long-haired braised egg? There was no need for that. He would need the braised egg in many places in the future. It had been 3 months since the release of the UV shielding device, but there was no movement from Alexander. The sales of the UV shielding device were very few, which made Eric very anxious. He quietly contacted Garrett, who was controlled by him, and the answer he got made him speechless. Alexander did discover the true function of the UV shield, and he really wanted to get this technology, but he thought too much. Yes, he thought too much, of course, mainly because Eric's identity as the Red Skull Guard was too intimidating. He suspected that the UV shield was a trap set by Eric for him, with the purpose of taking away his power. Hydra has several branches, Alexander's branch is lurking inside S.H.I.E.L.D., and the rest are Baron Stella, Baron Zemo, Lady Viper, Whitehall, Malik family. Cut off one head and grow 2 heads. There are too many branches of Hydra, and there is no connection between them. They will only cooperate once or twice when necessary, which makes them more difficult to be eliminated, but also makes them seriously lack trust. Now, suddenly another Red Skull Guard appeared, and looking at their target, it seems to be directly aimed at the Insight Plan. How can Alexander not be vigilant? He seriously suspected that Eric was sent by other departments of Hydra to seize power. Therefore, he was very cautious and did not do anything. He just sent his men to buy a few UV shielding devices every now and then for his own research. He did not dare to buy too many at a time, for fear that Eric would get suspicious. Almost all of Eric's few orders were contributed by Alexander. 3 months of research proved how serious the technological barriers between Wakanda technology and conventional technology were, and it was also gradually wearing out Alexander's patience. He was angry about this matter. However, he had to be patient. Alexander was a person who could endure. He endured for decades for the Insight project. You can imagine how much he could endure. Isn't it just a UV shielding device? If it can't be researched in 1 day, it will take a year. If it can't be researched in 1 year, it will take 10 years. Anyway, his Insight project will take at least more than 10 years to start, so there is no rush. He is not in a hurry, but Eric is. He doesn't even want his face for this, but in the end, people don't take the bait. But there is no way to be anxious. Garrett is just Alexander's subordinate and can't influence Alexander's decision. Eric has no other way for a while, so he can only wait. The UV shielding device was not selling well, but the maglev train was a big hit. After attending the test run ceremony that afternoon, the White House held a meeting that evening, and 3 days later, it placed the first order for Alice Industries, a maglev line from New York to Washington. The total length is about 360 kilometers, the construction period is 5 years, and the total investment is $30 billion. That night, the entire Alice industry was reveling all night, and the employees celebrated to their heart's content and stayed up all night. Eric fulfilled his promise to them and participated in the construction of the world's first maglev train line. Their names will be recorded in history. The valuation of Alice Industries increased dozens of times overnight, and others could not sit still. The White House, the military, banks, and major financial groups put pressure on Alice Industries, urging Alice Industries to go public as soon as possible. The White House and the military want to control Alice Industries in their own hands, and the bankers want to get a piece of this big pie. Of course, there were also some bold forces that did not intend to take the right path. For a time, thieves and commercial spies became frequent visitors to Alice Industries, almost trampling down the threshold of Alice Industries. Unfortunately, no matter who came, they all returned empty-handed. Most of them fell on the security system designed by Eric himself. Even if someone escaped the security system, they would fall on Eric's safe. No matter how powerful the thief is, he can't pry open Eric's safe, which makes Eric's safe a legend and taboo in the industry. Eric almost laughed his teeth off when he found out later. Since there is no breakthrough on the SHIELD side for a while, Eric plans to build his own team first. First is his mascot, Hawkeye Barton. According to speculation, Barton is not yet an adult and is still in a circus performing and secluded. With a name, age, and range, it is much easier to find than the person he asked Xiao Zhangjian to find. Throw a few gold bars to the mole. Eric believes that it won't take long before Mr. Mole, who has friends all over the world, can send Barton to him. As for the other person, Eric needs to go there in person. Ivan Vanko, the future Whiplash, is a Russian genius scientist who can rival Tony Stark in the field of mechanical engineering. His father, Anton Vanko, once worked with Howard Stark to develop the arc reactor. Later, because he wanted to use the arc reactor to make ill-gotten gains, he was expelled by Howard and returned to Russia. Eric values his talent very much and knows his rebelliousness, so he plans to go there in person. The Yenisei River, the largest river in Russia, is located south of the Siberian city of Krasnoyarsk. As soon as Eric got off the plane, he discovered a very embarrassing thing. He didn't understand Russian. Eric can speak many languages, including English, German, Polish, Chinese, Hebrew, etc., but he cannot speak Russian. Then, because he couldn't express himself clearly and the driver misunderstood, he was sent here. Eric also thought he had arrived at the place, so he got out of the car in a daze, and then walked along the Yenisei River for more than an hour. He discovered with a confused face that there seemed to be something wrong with this place. It was snowing heavily in the sky, and the Yenisei River not far away was already covered with thick ice. On the shore, there were several low plants, their bare branches covered with snow. Eric looked around, not to mention people, not even a bird. Eric shook his head speechlessly, sat cross-legged on the ground, closed his eyes, and carefully felt the Earth's magnetic field. Pigeons can find their way home through the Earth's magnetic field, and Magneto can do the same. As long as there is a magnetic field, Magneto cannot get lost. Carefully observing the changes in the magnetic field lines and the pulsation of the Earth's magnetism, Eric quickly determined his location. He wished he could immediately find the driver just now and give him a good beating. This was completely going in the opposite direction. This place is completely opposite to where he wants to go. Huh. Such a familiar magnetic field. What is this? Eric suddenly sensed a special magnetic field far away. It seemed to be a person, but it was not a mutant or an ordinary human being. It was very strange and powerful. Very familiar too. Eric just crossed his legs and slowly flew high into the sky, hiding under the dark clouds, drifting towards the strange magnetic field source. So it's this barbarian. Why did he come to Siberia? Below, the strange magnetic field source is actually Magneto's former subordinate, the Red Tank. Red Tank, many people think he is a mutant, but in fact he is not. His power comes from Cytoric, the evil god of the Crimson Universe. He was an ordinary person, the half-brother of Professor. Cytorac's magic gives Red Tank unlimited power and makes his body indestructible. He can even wrestle with the Hulk, resist Thor's thunder, and resist Wolverine's Edelman alloy steel claws. Once his body is activated, almost nothing can stop him. Red Tank is one of Magneto's favorite subordinates, because he is easy to control. Under the influence of Cytorac's magic, his intelligence has significantly deteriorated, His emotions are easily out of control, and he has typically simple-minded and well-developed limbs. Magneto is like the mage in the game, and the mage's favorite teammate is, of course, the human shield. The red tank is simply synonymous with the human shield. No matter which universe, the ability of the red tank is exactly the same. Cytoric, the dimensional demon, this is the power of the multiverse. Eric looked at the red tank below and sighed. At this time, the red tank, wearing a red armor, kept hitting the ice, looking anxious, as if he was looking for something. Marco. What are you looking for? Do you need my help? Kane Marco, Red Tank's real name, sounded very smooth to Eric when he called it. Red Tank heard the cry and looked up to see Eric floating above him. When a normal person sees someone floating above them, they will at least ask what is going on first, but Red Tank doesn't want to do that. He directly picks up a large piece of ice half a man high and throws it at Eric. This kid is really a tiger. Eric avoided the ice block speechlessly, and at the same time he also saw the scarlet eyes of the red tank. Eric was very familiar with this look, which meant that the red tank was extremely angry. At this time, anyone standing in front of him will be regarded as an enemy by him, including Magneto. In order not to irritate him anymore, Eric landed slowly and walked towards him carefully. At the same time, he adjusted the magnetic field here to make the pulsation of the geomagnetic field soft and gentle. Then he reached out and carefully released a weak electromagnetic pulse, trying to this inhibits the pituitary gland of the red tank. Unfortunately, Eric underestimated Cytorac's magic power. As soon as the weak electromagnetic pulse touched Red Tank's body, it was regarded as an attack by the scarlet magic power in his body and bounced away. Then, Red Tank recovered. Angry. Roar. The red tank roared, and rushed straight towards Eric. Its huge body, like a wild bull, moved forward indomitably. The ice surface under his feet was greatly cracked by his steps, and countless ice particles were splashed. Eric stretched out one hand and pointed his palm at the red tank. His powers rioted, and brilliant blue lights appeared in the air. It was plasma produced by the ionization of the air by a super strong electromagnetic field. Then, there is no more. Eric retracted his palm in embarrassment and quickly stepped aside to avoid the impact of the red tank. His original intention was to control the armor of Red Tank through supernatural powers. Unfortunately, the armor was deeply eroded by Cytorac's magic power and could no longer be regarded as pure metal. He actually couldn't control it. The red tank rushed far away before realizing that it hadn't hit anyone. It stopped slowly, turned its head in confusion, saw Eric in the distance, and roared, "Bug, don't run." Eric rolled his eyes. Where did I run away? Is it because you ran away yourself? The red tanks in this universe seem to have lower IQs. Red Tank rushed towards Eric again. Eric waved his hand towards the ground, and a wisp of metal powder separated from the riverbed and gathered into a small metal ball in his hand. Eric raised his arm and aimed the metal ball at Red Tank. Light flashed on his palm, and the magnetic field was superimposed layer by layer. The metal ball flew out like an arrow from a string. This is an electromagnetic gun. The weapon has not been developed yet, but Eric used it first. The metal ball hit Red Tank's left shoulder with a terrifying initial velocity. Red Tank staggered, but still did not stop. After failing to hit, Eric separated a large amount of metal from the riverbed again, and pushed his hands horizontally towards Red Tank. A large amount of metal powder gathered on Red Tank's feet, making his feet heavier and heavier. At first, Red Tank didn't care, but as time went on, the metal on his feet became more and more, and gradually turned into two big iron lumps, which seriously affected his pace. Finally, the two big iron lumps grew together and turned into a big metal hemisphere, and his body was inserted straight in the center of the hemisphere. Red Tank turned into a big tumbler. "You bug!" Red Tank roared, raised two fists as big as casseroles, bent down and smashed them hard on the metal hemisphere, and two big holes were smashed on the metal hemisphere. Eric chuckled, raised his right hand slightly, and the metal hemisphere immediately returned to its original state. Then, he controlled the metal hemisphere to fly upside down, hanging Red Tank by his head and feet. "Bug! Let Red Tank down!" Red Tank roared, and seeing Eric's mocking smile, he became even more furious. He struggled and pulled his legs out. Eric frowned. "This won't work. He can keep controlling these metal powders and keep Red Tank hanging in the air so that he can't hurt himself. But this seems to have no other effect except making Red Tank more and more angry. Moreover, he can't outlast Red Tank. With the support of Starak's magic, Red Tank will not get tired, nor will he die of hunger or thirst, but Eric will, so he must find a way to calm his anger. Well, let's use the old method. Eric moved his fingers slightly and put the Red Tank down. There was only one way to calm the Red Tank's anger, and that was to let him vent enough. The metal hemisphere quickly deformed in the air and threw the Red Tank directly down. He stood up, shook the ice on his head, let out a thunderous roar, and rushed towards Eric again. Eric controlled the metal powder to turn into a cheetah, and pounced on the Red Tank fiercely. Then, Eric aimed his palm at a mountain not far away. He just sensed that there was a large iron mine there. A large amount of iron elements were extracted, and the mountain quickly cracked, collapsed, and broke, and soon formed a large pit in the original place. If someone discovered it in the future, I'm afraid there will be another unsolved mystery in the world. Eric couldn't care about that. He controlled the iron elements to transform into a large number of metal beasts, including common animals such as lions, tigers, and elephants, as well as dinosaurs, werewolves, and aliens. 10,000 beasts are running wildly. A large number of metal beasts stepped on the ice, roaring and rushing towards Red Tank. Red Tank had smashed the metal cheetah with one punch. Seeing the huge number of beasts running towards him, he shouted excitedly, licked his lips with a scarlet tongue, and rushed forward with his fists waving. No matter the size of the beasts, they could not cause any damage to Red Tank, but Red Tank could smash a metal beast with every punch. However, under the feat that Red Tank had never noticed, the smashed metal beasts decomposed into wisps of metal powder, drifted behind Eric, and turned into a giant beast again, rushing towards Red Tank. Over and over again, Eric relied on his powerful mental power to control his supernatural powers and transformed the metal powder into various shapes. Unknowingly, he was having a lot of fun. This is something that Magneto has never done. Even the old Magneto may not be able to do such a delicate and large number of operations, but Eric did it. The body strengthened by the super soldier potion allows him to control his superpowers more accurately and has more powerful energy. This is a problem of the upper limit. The super soldier potion has increased the upper limit of his superpowers. Unicorns, giants, flying dragons, and later, even spaceships and transformers appeared. Anyway, as long as Eric can think of something, he will use metal powder to materialize it and smash it in front of Juggernaut to destroy it. Even with a strong body and huge mental power, such consumption makes Eric gradually exhausted. He suddenly woke up and cursed himself for being stupid. You said it would be better to turn out 10,000 iron balls for Juggernaut to smash. Why do you have to show off these things? Who is he showing off to? It seems to be a little bit short. Looking at Juggernaut again, the red light in his eyes is fading, but there is still a little residue, which is greater than the counterattack. There was not much power left and it could not be used anymore. Eric put down his hands, and the metal beast lost control and turned into a handful of metal powder and scattered on the ice. The white ice surface suddenly turned black. Red Tank was fighting with Optimus Prime just now, and he was fighting vigorously. Suddenly, his opponent was gone, and he didn't hold back his fist and fell on the ice. Eric quickly stepped forward and punched him on the back of the head, smashing him into the ice, and then punched him again, aiming at the back of the head and hammering hard. A big hole was soon hammered out on the ice, and Red Tank fell into the water. Eric controlled the iron sand to pull him up and continued to hammer. Ah! Bug! Red Tank will tear you apart. Red Tank roared, resisted Eric's iron fist, turned over, and took a few punches from Eric with his nose, then he covered his nose with one hand, clenched his fist with the other hand, and hit Eric hard. Eric was not as stupid as him. He used his face to catch the punch. He quickly dodged to the side and avoided the punch, but also let Red Tank stand up. Haha, Bug, let Red Tank hit you with a punch. Red Tank licked his lips excitedly, and his fists clenched, clack. Well, I let you hit me with a punch, and then we sit down and have a good talk, how about that? Eric stared at his eyes closely, and he seemed to have regained his sanity. No. You let me hit you with 2 punches, no, 3 punches. Ha! He knows how to bargain, it seems that he has really recovered. Okay. Just 3 punches. Come on. Eric stood there with a smile. Red Tank walked over with a grim smile, aimed at Eric's head and hit it hard. He had already imagined the scene of Eric's head bursting like a watermelon, and the excitement on his face became more and more intense. Unfortunately, this could only be his imagination. When Eric's fist was still a few centimeters away from him, he easily ducked aside and let the punch pass. Red Tank must punch with all his strength, and the same goes for this punch. He punched with all his strength, but his opponent dodged, and he almost dodged. Why are you hiding? Why can't I hide? You didn't say you couldn't hide. Eric stood aside and shrugged, looking innocent. Well, it seems that I really didn't say it. Sorry, this punch doesn't count. Let's do it again. You can't hide. Red Tank touched his head, feeling a little embarrassed. How can that happen? You've already punched me, but you still blame me for not punching. No, there are still 2 punches left. Eric rejected him righteously. Oh, okay, then I'll punch you 2 more times, and you can't hide. Red Tank raised his casserole-sized fist again. Eric stood there calmly. Keep your word, I will never hide. When Red Tank heard this, he immediately became happy. He waved his fist again, aimed at Eric's head, and hit it hard. Unfortunately, he missed again. An invisible electromagnetic shield blocked his fist, and his fist couldn't make any progress when it was 1 foot away from Eric's head. Hey! What is this? Red Tank shouted dissatisfied. Oh, this is my shield. It turns on automatically when I'm in danger. It's not my fault. Eric pretended to be innocent again. In fact, he was laughing crazy in his heart. He was bullying the stupid boy. Ah. No. This punch doesn't count. Red Tank was almost furious. I didn't dodge. Eric continued to play innocent. But, I didn't hit. Eric rolled his eyes. You didn't hit me, blame me. It was you who didn't hit me. Come on, there's 1 more punch, I won't dodge, and I won't open the shield, I'll definitely let you hit me, okay? Really? You're not lying to me. Silly kids are really easy to coax. Eric smiled sincerely. Really, hit me now. Okay. Red Tank raised his fist for the 3rd time, but his expression was no longer as excited as before, but seemed to be completing a task. The casserole-sized fist fell down. Eric didn't dodge, and even withdrew the magnetic field shield, but would he really take a punch with his face? Of course not. Seeing the huge fist approaching, Eric raised his little fist. The difference from before was that a layer of silver luster shone on Eric's little fist. It was the vibranium hidden in his cells, which was gathered on his fist. Eric seemed to feel that this was not enough to satisfy his hatred. Several spikes grew on the joints of his little fist, which were also made of vibranium. Bang! The 2 fists intersected, and an invisible shock wave swept across the ice. Red Tank took a few steps back, baring his teeth and shaking his hands. That punch really hurt him. But it was just painful, not even breaking the skin. Eric stood there without moving. The kinetic energy from Red Tank was completely absorbed by the vibranium, converted into energy shock and returned to Red Tank. He was just shocked by the energy shock, and he was also not injured at all. Okay, the 3 punches are over, let's sit down and talk. Eric imitated Coulson's smile, trying to make himself look harmless. You hit me. Red Tank looked aggrieved. I just changed a part to receive your fist, and you didn't say that I had to use my head, so I used my fist. Eric tried to defend himself. Look, you hit me, I didn't dodge, right? Yes. Red Tank nodded in confusion. You hit me, I didn't open the shield, right? Yes. Red Tank nodded in confusion x2. You hit me, hit my fist, right? Yes. Red Tank nodded in confusion x3. So, our agreement is over. You hit me 3 times, now it's time to sit down and talk. Eric smiled and sat cross-legged on the frozen lake. Red Tank thought about it for a long time. It seemed to be this reason. People asked me to hit, and I hit, although I hit their fist, but I did hit, yes, hit. I won. Thinking of this, Red Tank sat down happily. Marco, can you tell me why you came to Siberia? Eric saw this stupid kid sitting down, so he asked his doubts. I came to save Sammy. Bad, where is Sammy? Red Tank remembered his purpose and stood up with a scream. Sammy. Who is Sammy? Sammy is Red Tank's friend, his best friend. Speaking of friends, Red Tank smiled happily. This shocked Eric. Red Tank, could he still smile like that? He actually had a friend. It looked like a friend who was truly close to him. How could this be possible? This guy was just a puppet of Cytoric. His brain was constantly influenced by Cytorak's magic. How could he have positive emotions? Eric released a small electromagnetic pulse again. This time, the crimson magic in Red Tank's body did not move, and Red Tank calmed down smoothly. Eric had a lot of experience chatting with Red Tank. Under his guidance, Red Tank told the whole story in bits and pieces. It turned out that Red Tank really had a friend, a Canadian mutant boy named Sammy Pear. The boy's mutant ability was to survive underwater, and the side effects of the mutation made his body covered with green fish scales, his ears became gills, and his palms became webbed feet. A good half-grown child just became an ugly fish man. His parents hated his appearance and often beat and kicked him, and said bad things to him. Little Sammy didn't dare to go out anymore and had to endure it silently. Until by chance, little Sammy met Red Tank, who was also often abused by his family in his childhood and immediately became a good friend of little Sammy. The two had a happy time, but unfortunately it didn't last long. Sammy was sold to a research institute by his unscrupulous father. Red Tank was furious when he knew about it and tracked him all the way to Siberia. This is the whole story. As for why Red Tank smashed ice on the river, it was because he got news from the locals that a group of people had captured a lot of children and the submarine left in this place, and then he stupidly smashed ice there for 2 days, trying to dig out the submarine. What is this? Red Tank's version of carving a boat to find a sword. What a stupid child. Eric wanted to hit the wall when he heard it. This kid is too stupid. Come on, follow me from now on. I'll take you to find Sammy. Can you find Sammy? Red Tank was very surprised and slapped Eric's shoulder with his palm as big as a palm fan. Eric was not careful and almost fell down. Don't touch me. Eric carefully moved 1 meter away, looked at Red Tank's thick and long arms, and moved another meter. Let's make a deal. I'll help you find Sammy, and you'll follow me in the future. How about that? Eric thought Red Tank would definitely agree immediately, but he looked hesitant. Well, I can't follow you. I still have a job. What? You have a job? Eric was shocked again. Is this still Red Tank? Not only does he have friends, but he also has a job now. What kind of job? Tell me about it. The British hired me. It seems to be called the new Excalibur team. We specialize in doing good things, and Red Tank is a hero. Red Tank was very proud when talking about his job. Puff. Superhero Red Tank. Eric almost spit out his overnight meal. Is there anything more ridiculous than this? You joined the new Excalibur team just to be a hero. No, they pay me a salary. Red Tank shook his huge head and answered stupidly. Salary. For money, how much do they give you? 50,000 pounds. It's twice as much as their government officials. Red Tank smiled with satisfaction and was very satisfied with his salary. Monthly salary or weekly salary? You are stupid, of course it is annual salary. The British are really brave to hire Red Tank with an annual salary of 50,000 pounds. Okay, I will give you an annual salary of 5 million pounds, and you will follow me in the future. It's a deal. Now let's go save Sammy. Eric shook his head and stood up. He couldn't believe that it was so easy to trick Red Tank into his hands. Not only did I help the idiot find friends, but I also helped him solve the employment problem. I am such a good person. Alas, other people work hard on typing on weekends, but I am even busier on weekends than on weekdays. How many villains are there in the Marvel Universe? No one can tell for sure. From the Universal Truth Church that spans the galaxy to a criminal gang of 2 or 3 people, there are simply countless villains. Eric couldn't determine who had taken Sammy away for a while, but he believed he could find it. The Yenisei River flows from south to north and finally flows into the Arctic Ocean. The group used a submarine, so they could only move north and follow the main trunk of the Yenisei River to find them. Eric took off with the Red Tank and flew down the Yenisei River. While flying, he expanded the magnetic field sensing range and searched with all his strength. Considering that the submarine had been gone for at least 2 days, Eric focused his search on the second half of the Yenisei River. Unfortunately, it seemed that God was dissatisfied with his behavior of deceiving the silly boy. Eric flew around the Yenisei River twice and found no clues. He even searched some branches with larger water volume, but still found nothing. Red Tank, the silly boy, looked at the clouds in the sky with a silly face. Flying so high, he couldn't see the ground at all, and had no idea that he had already circled the Yenisei River twice. Eric glanced at him quietly, and seeing that he trusted him so much, he gritted his teeth, increased his speed suddenly, and went straight to the north. The Arctic Ocean is so vast, and Eric's magnetic field induction can only cover a small area. He can only make up for it with speed. Along the way, Eric encountered many ships, but he didn't find any magnetic field fluctuations of mutants, let alone any traces of submarines, which made him very anxious. Unconsciously, it was white in sight, and Eric even found a few polar bears on an iceberg. It's already the North Pole. Eric stopped helplessly and landed slowly. Have you found it? The silly boy thought he had arrived at the place, and excitedly punched each other with his fists, making a bang-bang sound. Well, they should be around here. I need to use a big move to find the specific location. Don't disturb me. In order to maintain his face, Eric could only swallow his anger. Red Tank obediently retreated more than 10 meters away, fearing that he would disturb Eric. Eric sighed. He brought trouble upon himself. Who told him to be so sure? Let's find him. He was indeed preparing to use a big move, which was a move he was very reluctant to use because it was too brain-consuming. Eric took off again, flew to a higher place than before, and sat cross-legged in the air. The metal powder he carried with him spread out, forming a huge concave mirror in the air, aimed at the ground, and he himself was just at the focus of the concave surface. Eric looked up at the mirror on the top, took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and emptied his mind. Then, a continuous and stable electromagnetic pulse emanated from him continuously. Almost in an instant, Eric received feedback from the ground, a huge amount of feedback, and unimaginable data that impacted his mind. Mountains, rivers, icebergs, oceans, ships, humans, polar bears. As long as there is something on the ground, it will feed back an electromagnetic pulse to him, and then it will be underground, under the ice and sea. His brain was instantly flooded with a huge amount of data. Eric's trick was inspired by radar and radio telescopes. As early as when Magneto was young, he had mastered this trick, but he didn't dare to use it. When helping Professor X build a brainwave enhancer, Magneto had studied radio telescopes in detail. After all, there is a large radio telescope outside Xavier's manor. It is impossible not to be interested in it every day. It was also because he had a thorough understanding of the principle of radio telescopes that Magneto joined forces with Beast Hank to build a brainwave enhancer. However, whether it is radar, radio telescope, or brainwave enhancer, data processing has always been done by computers. How can it be analyzed directly by human brains like Eric today? It is God's blessing that his head did not explode on the spot. Eric was lost in the vast amount of data, barely maintaining a trace of clarity. He struggled to control his supernatural powers, first blocking the terrain data, and the data flow immediately decreased by 30%. Then came the ocean currents and fish schools under the sea, and the data flow weakened by 30%, so he had a chance to breathe. There was still 40% of the data left, and Eric blocked all non-metallic signal sources again, and the data was reduced by more than half, leaving less than 100,000. Then, it was too small. As long as it was smaller than a submarine, it was blocked. The sunken ship on the seabed was blocked. The offshore well platform and fishing boat were blocked. The polar research station was blocked. Finally, Eric finally locked the target. Under an iceberg, there was actually a huge underground base. Finally I found it. Eric sneered and flew straight there. But just after flying for 2 minutes, he was embarrassed and turned back. His mind was too confused, and he forgot about the silly boy Red Tank. Boss, is Sammy really here? Red Tank looked at the iceberg in front of him, eager to try. Eric was speechless. This silly boy, could it be that he wanted to work on the iceberg? What are you thinking? There is a base under the iceberg. Well, don't destroy this base. I need it. If you break it, I will deduct your salary. Also, you can kill people wearing green clothes, but you can't kill anyone wearing white clothes. Remember, if you kill a person wearing white clothes, I will deduct 1 month's salary from you. After a simple magnetic field induction, Eric has determined which force this is. This is still the fault of Red Skull. This is the secret base established by Red Skull. He started secret research when he was in power. Now 2 generations have been bred in the base, but they still worship Red Skull and continue to conduct research during the Red Skull period. The object of research in this base is a hammer, which is silver-white, with a golden handle and a round hammer head, just like an auction hammer. The surface of the hammer is engraved with complex patterns and spells, and there is an evil and huge energy flowing in the hammer. Eric tried to control it, but the hammer directly bounced his superpowers away. First, use the method of elimination. This is not Thor's hammer. However, this is Asgard's hammer, and only this hammer family can have such a hammer with a strong magical atmosphere. Skadi's hammer. Hiss. It's a bit troublesome. Eric went through the hammers he knew in his mind and finally locked the target. Speaking of this hammer, it is also inseparable from Thor's family. The owner of this hammer is Thor's uncle, Odin's elder brother, and he calls himself Kul the Great Snake. He was once the god king of Asgard, the god of fear. Due to his brutal rule, Odin overthrew him and sealed him on Earth. However, the Great Snake left 8 hammers on Earth. As long as you get his approval and lift the hammer, you can become the Sky Hammer Messenger and master powerful divine power. Great Snake Kul, a father-level existence, how can I let you go? This hammer cannot be moved. This is not something he can point out now, and of course, Eric does not intend to touch this thing in the future. This hammer is a pit. The Heavenly Hammer Messenger, to put it nicely, is not the puppet of the Orochi. He didn't want to touch it, and naturally his men couldn't go either. Eric remembered that the red tank seemed to have been chosen by the big snake, and got a hammer to play with. In the end, he took it off and lost all his crimson magic power. This silly kid is already pitiful enough, but we can't let him touch such immoral things again. The 2 quickly entered the base. Eric raised his hand slightly and turned off the annoying alarm. There are not many people in this base, and there are less than 2,000 people at full capacity. The 2 of them can kill them all with any attack. But with his younger brother present, Eric is not going to do it himself. He explains clearly the precautions and lets the stupid kid go. Killed. Hydra soldiers wearing green military uniforms accounted for about 90%, plus the base's leaders of about 10 people. These people are useless and can be used by the red tank at will. Eric was reluctant to kill the nearly 100 remaining scientists. What is lacking most in the 21st century? What a talent. These scientists are all talents and the most important resource. How can you waste it casually? Although they have been separated from society for a long time and their knowledge cannot keep up with the times, they can still learn. They have been studying this hammer for decades, and more or less, they will always gain something. When Eric contacts Asgard in the future, these people are all important people who study Asgard's technology or magic. Team. After the red tank crashed all the way, Eric took a moment to sense it, confirmed the direction, and walked straight to the research room. Skadi's hammer is there, little Sammy is there, and almost all the scientists are there, just in time to catch them all. Looking at the situation, they seem to be preparing a blood sacrifice. Fortunately, they came quickly. Sammy is still alive, and with him are hundreds of mutant children, all locked in several small cages. Several X-gene suppressors were installed on the cage by Hydra, causing these mutant children to temporarily lose their superpowers. Sensing this thing, Eric became careful. His superpowers also came from the X-gene. These suppressors also worked on him. HMPH. X-gene suppressor. Did Bolivar Trask create it? This little guy just deserves a beating. Eric shook his head dissatisfied and controlled several iron balls to fly up at the same time. The suppressor was smashed. At first, the mutant children in the cage were terrified, thinking that these demons were going to torture them again, and they hugged each other tremblingly. But after waiting for a long time, I didn't get the whipping I imagined, and there was still a lot of chaos all around. The demons were running around and shouting, as if they had encountered an enemy. A few daring children saw the opportunity and used their abilities to knock down a Hydra. The remaining children saw the opportunity and took action one after another. For a moment, there was lightning and thunder in the laboratory, violent winds, and all kinds of things. Such an attack is dizzying. Not only were many Hydra soldiers killed, But the scientists were also injured a lot, and several instruments and equipment were also damaged. Eric hurriedly took action and wrapped the little mutants with a magnetic shield, which not only protected them, but also restricted their actions. These scientists, instruments and equipment have been regarded as something he has in his pocket. How can you let you destroy them so casually? For these devices, he did not dare to use electromagnetic pulse. Long live Hydra! Eric stepped into the research room and shouted a slogan. The Hydras subconsciously put their feet together, stood up straight, and shouted, "Long live Hydra!" Who are you? After shouting stupidly, a Hydra finally realized that Eric didn't look like one of them, and raised the gun in his hand and pointed it at Eric. Eric ignored him, walked into the research room with official steps, looked around, nodded with satisfaction, and said in a smooth Berlin accent, "Yes, even though the general has been gone for decades, you still have not forgotten yourselves. This is a great mission. When the general comes back, I will definitely take credit for you. The general is still alive. Also, who are you?" An old man with white hair walked out of the crowd. He was wearing a white coat and a green military uniform underneath. He looked like a leader. HMPH. How bold. How dare you question the general's strength? Eric's expression changed. He took out a strange-looking pistol from his arms and shot at the old man. There was no blood splatter on the spot as expected, just a cloud of smoke spraying out from the muzzle of the gun, covering the old man's face. When Eric drew his gun, several Hydra soldiers took out their guns and pointed them at Eric, but when they saw this scene, they all put down their guns in a daze. "Ah! My face! My face!" The old man scratched his face with both hands, fell to the ground convulsively, twitched all over, and let out a miserable cry. The skin on his face quickly dissolved, withered, and turned red. The hair falls out, ending up in the head of a red skull. After a while, the old man became silent, and his hands fell from his face, exposing his cheeks, causing the remaining people to step back in horror. Death dust. The general's weapon. Several older researchers exclaimed and knelt down on one knee. Others looked shocked when they heard the name and followed suit. Wu Yaya knelt down. Land. Eric put the pistol back in his arms, and the pistol quickly turned into a handful of powder and adhered to his clothes. There was no death dust in him, it was just some metal powder controlled by his superpower. Eric put his hands behind his back and looked around proudly. "I am the general's personal guard, with the rank of colonel. You can just call me Colonel Eric. I came here this time because I found someone using the general's name to seek personal gain and tracked him all the way here. According to military law, you should all be shot. But considering that you have not forgotten your mission for decades and have been sitting and studying for the general, I will spare your lives." Eric saw that everyone on the ground was relieved, and he smiled again. Hee, those main criminals outside are not as lucky as you. In the future, you must remember blood and honor and continue to contribute your strength to the general. Long live Hydra. Long live Hydra. Eric nodded with satisfaction. Very good. Everyone, pack up your belongings, pack all instruments and files, and wait for orders. But, Colonel, Scatty Hammer, aren't we going to study it? A thin young man asked carefully. What's your name? Eric stared at him expressionlessly, making him feel like a sieve. My name is Weber. Eric pointed at Weber and said, you will be their supervisor in the future. There is no need to study the hammer of Scatty anymore. I have found the answer in the literature. The hammer of Scatty is waiting for its master. Now the time is not right. No matter how much research is done, it is meaningless. After sending the Hydra researcher away, Eric turned around to look at the little mutants in the cage. It must be said that Hydra is really a group of lunatics without emotions. Most of these children are only 14 or 15 years old, and they are so cruel that they want to sacrifice all of them. When the children saw Eric turning around to look at them, they were all terrified and kept retreating. They saw Eric killing the Hydra just now. In their opinion, this man is a demon more terrible than those demons. Eric quickly found little Sammy in the crowd. His green scales made him the most conspicuous no matter how he hid. What should I do with these little guys? It's a headache. Little Sammy can go with Red Tank, but what about the rest? We can't just leave them alone, right? Sending them back to their place of origin is not a good idea either. Most of these mutant children have side effects of mutation. Although they will not become fish man freaks like little Sammy, their mutant identities can be easily seen from their appearance. Most of them were abandoned by their parents or ran away because of their mutant identity. Sending them back is like getting out of the wolf's den and into the tiger's mouth again. After thinking about it, Eric could only think of one place, Xavier School for the Gifted, where Professor X is, and it is the most friendly place for mutants in the world. You, come here. Eric pointed at little Sammy and ordered coldly. He is now playing the role of Red Skull's guard, and he can't be exposed by these little guys. Little Sammy was terrified and kept shaking his head and backing away, pushing away the people behind him, and retreated to the corner and curled up. Eric shook his head. After all, he was still a child, so he should stop scaring them. You don't have to be afraid. Without my order, they dare not do anything to you. You stay here for a few days first. After a few days, I will send you to another place. Don't worry, there will be no danger. Now, Sammy Pear, come here and meet someone with me. The structure of this base is very complicated, like a maze, and there are traps everywhere. It is difficult to travel safely if you are not an insider. Unfortunately, these things were no different from a piece of paper in front of Red Tank. He rushed all the way, hitting the wall and killing people. In more than 10 minutes, he demolished most of the base. After more than 10 minutes of tossing, Red Tank's excitement finally eased. At this time, he remembered what his boss Eric said. He looked back with a bitter face at the base that was almost turned into ruins by him. He almost cried. Now, the salary he just got was gone. When Eric came with little Sammy, Red Tank was carefully putting together the wall. He picked up large pieces of concrete wall, pointed at the holes in the wall, gestured for a long time, and then put them on with a tangled face, stretched out his hands as big as a palm fan to tidy up the edges and corners, trying to make the wall look like a hole. Unfortunately, with his IQ, he couldn't even play a jigsaw puzzle, let alone such a complicated, jigsaw game. When Eric arrived, he had already put together 3 walls, all of which were full of holes and pits, as if they were chewed by a dog. Sammy. Red Tank was so surprised when he saw little Sammy that he dropped the wall in his hand and ran over. He picked up little Sammy and turned around twice, and his joy was beyond words. Marco. Why are you here? Were you also captured by them? Run quickly, it's too dangerous here. Little Sammy's words surprised Eric. This little guy really regarded Red Tank as a friend. Why run? Red Tank is not afraid of danger. Red Tank is here to save Sammy. Red Tank smiled honestly, so innocently. It's over, Settlerak will lose a lot of money now. Hee hee, with Sammy here, Red Tank can hardly move towards evil again. A kind Red Tank, Settlerak is afraid to be angry to death, haha. Eric laughed secretly at the scene in front of him. After settling the remaining Hydra researchers, Eric took Red Tank and Sammy back to the Siberian ice field again. Although he accidentally received a subordinate and a bunch of scientific researchers, he couldn't forget the real owner. Ivan Vanko was not hard to find. He used the old routine, crushing the gangs all the way, using local bosses to find people. If he couldn't find him in one city, he would switch to another. Eric found him in the 3rd city. Ivan Vanko was about the same age as Tony Stark, both of them were young men in their 20s. Due to his father's wrong teaching method, Ivan gave up his studies very early and spent all day hanging out with a group of gangsters. When Eric found him, he was in a tattoo shop, getting his pet parrot tattooed on his lower back. Ivan Vanko, I admire your talent. How about working for me? Eric got straight to the point and threw a box of US dollars over. Ivan Vanko turned his head and took a look, sneered, and continued to enjoy the pain brought by the tattoo. He didn't take anesthesia. Eric raised his eyebrows. He was really brave. He even dared to ignore me. Since you are so brave, then of course I will wait for you for a while. Well, I can't wait here yet. I have to go to his house to wait. With the help of the local tyrant, Eric easily found Ivan Vanko's home, a shabby house in the slums. Anton Vanko sat on the bed, eating black bread, coughing from time to time. Howard Stark expelled Anton for espionage, which made Anton notorious in the academic world. No company was willing to hire him. He had been living off his old capital for decades and had already spent all his money. His son was not a good student. He had a genius brain but only knew how to raise birds, tattoo, and fight. A lot of unpleasant things made Anton's health worse and worse, and the poor medical conditions here made his condition worse and worse. Mr. Anton Vanke, I am Viscount Eric Lanchier from New York. I have admired you for a long time. I came here specially to talk to you today. After Eric entered the room, he sat opposite Anton very familiarly, completely ignoring his vigilant eyes. Mr. Anton, I'm sorry I don't understand Russian. I know you can speak English. How about we talk in English? Anton looked at him deeply and said, what is your purpose in coming to see me? Did Stark ask you to come? Or Alexander? Neither. Eric smiled and took out a photo from his arms. I came for you, for your son. Anton took the photo. His eyes suddenly widened, his hands trembled violently, and he coughed violently in excitement. The photo in his hand fell to the ground. In that photo, the Winter Soldier's confused expression occupied half of the photo paper, and on the remaining half, Howard Stark could be clearly seen lying in a pool of blood. When Eric returned to New York again, only Ivan Vanko followed him. Anton Vanko wanted to come, and Eric and Ivan also wanted him to come, but unfortunately he couldn't come. He was guilty of espionage, and no country would welcome a person who had committed espionage. Even if Eric paid to bribe the relevant departments, Anton would be treated as a key monitoring target, and this situation would not be good for anyone. As for Red Tank and Little Sammy, they were sent by Eric to Xavier School of Geniuses to send more than 100 new students to Professor X. As soon as he returned to the company, Eric held an emergency meeting and announced an important decision to establish the aerospace department. This decision shocked everyone. What's going on? I'm a railway builder, and it's okay to sell some sunscreen, but now I have to build a spaceship. Isn't this a bit too big a step? Will it be a joke? Everyone came forward and hoped that Eric would focus on the maglev train project, but Eric had his own plan. He set up the aerospace department that afternoon, with Ivan Vanko as the head of the department. The hammer of Skadi was a huge threat. If he did not take some corresponding measures, Eric felt that he would be unable to sleep and eat. The main reason for setting up the aerospace department was to deal with the crisis of the snake. The snake was the god of fear, and could enhance its ability by absorbing human fear. As long as the fear continued, the snake would have endless energy. In the Ultimate Universe, Odin even planned to blow up the Earth directly in order to deal with the snake, which was something Eric would never allow to happen. So he had to do something. Electromagnetic pulses of a specific frequency can stimulate the pituitary gland and other parts of the human brain and inhibit the production of emotional hormones. Eric is now very good at this trick. In his conception, as long as there are enough electromagnetic pulse generators covering the world, the emotions of all people on the earth can be suppressed at the same time, allowing humans to temporarily forget fear. Without fear, the snake would have no source of power and could be killed in minutes. The only option for electromagnetic pulsars that can cover the entire world is satellites. Winter passed and spring came, and a year passed in a flash. Eric's villa in the southern suburbs of New York was finally completed, and he moved in on Christmas Eve in 1993. The New York-Washington maglev train line has been in full swing. The construction of this line has brought hundreds of thousands of jobs to the U.S. government, greatly reducing the employment pressure of American youth. The head of the White House was so happy that he placed another order for Alice Industries, from Chicago to Washington, with a total length of 1,100 kilometers and an investment of $80 billion. Alice Industries stocks soared again, and American railway companies were anxious. They jointly wrote a letter to sue Alice Industries for violating antitrust laws. Then, there was a long lawsuit. Eric disdained all of this and left it to Jennifer to deal with. If he couldn't handle it, he would call General Ross, who had enough connections to settle these troubles. Of course, he also had enough reasons to help Alice Industries. In just 1 year, the money that Alice Industries helped him get from the Ministry of Defense was enough to build a 1,000-kilometer maglev train line. The metal prosthesis jointly developed by Stark Industries and Alice Industries was officially released. It attracted much attention on the day of release. Tony Stark once again showed off. The military paid great attention to this product. At least 10 generals appeared at the press conference. After the press conference, the military directly placed an order, not by piece, but by year. Within 5 years, all soldiers who were disabled for the country would be installed with metal prostheses for free and continue to serve. As for the soldiers who were disabled before, they could also apply to the government for installation, but they would have to wait in line. The weapons department of Alice Industries was successfully established, and the sonic weapon was successfully developed in just half a year. Because a large amount of electricity was required, the originally planned sonic gun did not succeed, but was changed to a sonic chariot. The sonic weapon was installed on the top of the car, and it looked like a radar car. After watching the prototype car, Eric's mouth twitched. Isn't this the one that blew away the green fat man? Compared with the success of sonic weapons, individual electromagnetic guns have encountered considerable trouble. The most important issue is energy. Electromagnetic guns require a lot of electrical energy. If you want to realize electromagnetic guns on individual soldiers, with current technology, energy can only be used from batteries, but the size of the battery directly affects the size and weight of the weapon. This is a seesaw of mutual constraints. The weapons department can only find the balance point between the two little by little. Eric did not intend to compromise on the power supply. He immediately formed the energy department, which was divided into two teams. One team specialized in graphene power supply. With his advanced technological reserves, it was only a matter of the number of experiments to develop a finished product. The second team was led by Ivan Vanko to study the arc reactor drawings bought from Anton. For the arc reactor, Ivan Vanko even resigned from his position as head of the aerospace department and devoted himself to the research of the reactor, just to compete with Tony Stark. The company has been on the right track. Eric's daily work is to read the report, sign it, and occasionally go to the laboratory to do some research. His life is very comfortable, but it makes him feel extremely bored. That day, Eric sat in the office listlessly again, checking the new reports from the finance department. A sales report caught Eric's attention. The UV shield, a very useless product, only had a few orders after it was launched. The sales volume for a few months did not exceed 10,000 units, and at least 80% of this was contributed by Alexander. However, since June last year, the sales volume of the UV shield has actually started to grow wildly. At the most, tens of thousands of units can be sold in a day. What's going on? Is Alexander planning to pile up the volume? But can that be piled up by volume? I called Jennifer, but she didn't know. I called the financial director, but she didn't know. I called the sales director, but she didn't understand. I asked everyone I could, but no one knew what was going on. Come to think of it, who in the entire Alice industry would care about that thing except Eric? If you have that spare time, you might as well visit a few more congressmen and run more errands for the maglev train business. If you can get an order, you will never have to worry about food and clothing for the rest of your life. Eric expressed his understanding of the employee's incompetence and did not delve too deeply into it. However, he still had to check it. This thing was related to his next plan and he could not be careless. But where to check it? This thing has been spread out since it was launched. It is sold through various channels. European and American countries are not like certain cats. You need to use your real name to buy things. Mr. Eric, two black gentlemen are visiting and say they are your friends. A call from the front desk interrupted Eric's thinking. Eric raised his eyebrows and the magnetic field induction spread down. Black friends. Nick Fury. This bad guy dares to say he is my friend. Doesn't his conscience hurt? Well, who is the other one? You mean, there are vampires in this world? Eric looked at the two black men in front of him with a strange expression. Are you sure you are not joking? I never joke. The speaker was a stern-looking black man, who was wearing all black in broad daylight. Black leather jacket, black leather pants, black leather shoes, black gloves, and black sunglasses. His dark outfit made his skin look a little white. Okay, your name is Brad, right? I'll believe what you said. So, what are vampires? Aliens? Mutants? Human mutations? Or another species? Eric hugged his arms together, saying he believed, but his face was full of distrust. It's a virus. An infectious virus that spreads through the host's saliva. It can penetrate the blood vessels throughout the body within 72 hours and reproduce new parasitic tissues. Nick Fury crossed his legs, looking very professional. Oh, virus. Oh my god, it seems I have to prepare more Asatis root. Eric covered his nose exaggeratedly, as if he would be infected if he loosened his grip a little. Eric. Nick Fury sat up straight and looked at him helplessly. We are not joking, these are all true. We are friends, how could I lie to you? Friend. Hearing this word, Eric was immediately angry. He stood up and pointed at Nick Fury and cursed. Is there a friend like you? I saved your boss's daughter from the hail of bullets, and you promised not to betray me, but someone leaned on my window that night. You came to my product launch conference hypocritically, but secretly sent a female spy to pry open my safe. Didn't you pry it open? Nick Fury shrugged, showing no remorse for what he did, and Eric was so angry that he wanted to kick him twice. Okay, Eric, I apologize, you know my job, we have rules. Your mother's job. I don't want to listen to your rules. Get out of here. Eric walked angrily to Nick Fury, grabbed his collar, lifted him up effortlessly, and threw him out of the office. After venting, Eric clapped his hands in satisfaction, with a smile on his face like a spring breeze. Okay, Brad, let's continue talking about vampires. Outside the door, Nick Fury stood up calmly, greeted Jennifer who happened to pass by and was frightened, and got on the elevator with his hands in his pockets. How is it? In the elevator, a man wearing a wide-brimmed hat covered his face with the hat and asked in a low voice. You saw, I was thrown out. Nick Fury didn't seem surprised at all about this man. We have no chance, it is impossible to get the technology of the UV shielding device through this incident. The man in the wide-brimmed hat was silent for a moment, and the elevator was about to reach the bottom, then the task assigned by the director. I think the director should try to cooperate with him. Nick Fury still looked like he had nothing to do with it, and he walked out on his own when the elevator opened. Mr. Brad, since you have been fighting against vampires, why do you come to me now? Eric looked at the Blade Warrior with a puzzled look, but in fact, he had already guessed the cause and effect of the matter in his heart. Vampires are most afraid of sunlight, or more precisely, ultraviolet rays. The ultraviolet shielding device you invented makes them no longer afraid of sunlight. Blade Warrior took out a lighter-sized object from his pocket and put it on the table. It was the first product of Alice Industry, the ultraviolet shielding device. Since 6 months ago, vampires have begun to equip themselves with ultraviolet shielding devices in large quantities. This gadget is simple to operate and easy to carry. Not only does it make me lose a powerful weapon, but it also allows vampires to walk during the day. Eric was silent for a long time, looking at the gadget he developed on the table, and raised his head after a while, as the situation bad. Very bad. In 6 months, the number of vampires has expanded at least 10 times. Blade Warrior clenched his fists and creaked. The United States, the United Kingdom, and even the whole of Europe are full of vampires. They are looking for food everywhere and capturing humans unscrupulously. Why haven't I heard any relevant reports? Eric asked a question that both of them knew. Vampires have a long lifespan. Blade Warrior's answer made Eric sigh secretly, as expected. Those selfish people in power, in order to live longer, are willing to become vampires, monsters that cannot see the light of day, hiding in dark rooms every day, relying on the blood of their former peers to survive. Now, with the existence of the UV shielding device, the last bit of concern of the people in power about becoming vampires has disappeared. As for sucking blood, what a joke, which of them didn't get rich by sucking the blood and sweat of the people? Eric picked up the phone on the table and called Jennifer. Fully recall the UV shielding device. What? There is no way to recall it. Then raise the price. Recall it at twice the price. If that doesn't work, then 5 times, 10 times. No matter what method you use, recall them all for me. This won't solve the problem. The Blade Warrior looked at Eric expressionlessly and slammed the phone. I know. Let me think about it. Eric frowned and tapped his fingers on the table. What are vampires afraid of? Silverware and garlic. Eric's eyes lit up and he immediately asked, where are the Bible and holy water? That's what the missionaries are doing to fool people. Blade Warrior rolled his eyes, which was rare. Is that so? Eric touched his chin and fell into thinking again. Where is the Homeland Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Bureau? What is their attitude? Of course it's a total eradication. In the surprised eyes of the Blade Warriors, Nick Fury, who had just been thrown out, came back and sat down on the sofa naturally, but the culprit who just threw him didn't look angry at all. Nothing. Who is it? Eric asked confusedly. Nick Fury shook his head, a close associate of the director. Eric, I can only help you so far. It's up to you. Eric shrugged indifferently and said, then let's talk about how to deal with vampires. Fury, how many people can you send? 20,000 agents. Your family is quite rich. Eric clicked his tongue. What about those people above? How to deal with them? Who? Is there anyone up there? We are going to fight vampires. Nick Fury said firmly, with a hint of chill in his words. No different treatment. That's good. Eric nodded secretly. Okay, what happened this time is my fault. All equipment is provided by Alice Industries. Fury, can you help me purchase a batch of silver? The time is too short, and I'm afraid there won't be enough on the market. Quote. Okay, you can pay for it. Of course. So what will we do in 20 days? If you make a mistake, you will have to bear the consequences. Eric knows this very well. Why do you have to wait 20 days? Blade Warrior frowned, feeling that the time was dragging on a bit too long. Because in 20 days, God will give a big gift to the vampires. There are no blades or vampires in the Emperor Thanos universe. So the effect of the UV shield on vampires was something Eric had not considered at the beginning, but since it has already happened, there is no point in regretting it. The right thing to do is to find a way to make up for it as soon as possible. In 20 days, Alice Industries relied on the relationship between the National Strategic Defense Attack and the Logistics Support Bureau to purchase a large amount of silver, and added silver to the bullets of 20,000 agents. All melee weapons were replaced with silver, and the rest were all packed up and taken away by Eric, and no one knew what to do with them. In addition to silver weapons, Eric also urgently developed UV weapons. He knew that with the UV shield, the effect of UV weapons on vampires was almost zero, but he still developed it. UV shielding was his invention. He had a way to make it effective, and he had a way to make it ineffective. First of all, there was the UV grenade, a power supply, a diode, some fluorescent powder, and a control board. With a simple combination, a grenade was born. Since there is no need to consider the explosive power, Eric made the grenade as small as possible, only the size of a longan. The agents can grab more than 10 at a time, and it is no problem for each person to carry hundreds. Then, there are ultraviolet bullets. The bullets contain two special compounds. After the bullet hits a hard object, the two compounds mix and burst, producing a large amount of ultraviolet rays. Finally, there are ultraviolet armor. Yes, he madly coated each agent's clothes with a special coating. As long as the attached power is turned on, each agent will become an ultraviolet light source, blinding the vampire's eyes. The 20-day wait made the Blade Warrior extremely tormented. He fought with vampires every day, and saw a large number of humans being preyed on by vampires every day. This torment almost broke his tough nerves. But he still had to wait. After 20 days, a super strong solar storm will sweep the Earth. That is indeed a great gift from God to vampires. 20 days passed in a flash, and Eric looked at the blue planet in front of him and sighed. This was the first time he flew out of the Earth after coming to this universe. This blue planet, no matter which universe it is in, is so dazzling, beautiful, and yet awe-inspiring. Eric took a deep breath and tapped his feet lightly. The makeshift spaceship quickly disintegrated and turned into streams of silver particles, like flexible silver dragons, circling and dancing in the air. Yes, the entire spaceship is made of pure silver. Under Eric's superpowers, the spaceship does not need any navigation system or power system at all. It is just a pure silver shell that conceals people's ears. Under Eric's control, the silver dragons flew everywhere in an orderly manner. Two of the dragons hovered behind Eric and turned into a huge funnel. The entrance of the funnel was aimed at the sun, with a diameter of hundreds of miles. The exit changed into a very complex structure, aimed at Eric. This is an energy-gathering device designed temporarily by Eric, which can gather the energy of the solar storm, decompose and transform it, and then transmit it to Eric, greatly enhancing his superpowers. A solar storm is a violent activity that erupts on the sun, releasing a large amount of electromagnetic radiation, high-energy charged particle flow and plasma. In essence, it is a grand event of super strong electromagnetic fields. The remaining silver dragons all crawled at Eric's feet, waiting for the king's dispatch. The sun was shining brightly in the sky. New York was still as prosperous as before. The warm sunshine dispelled the severe cold of winter, allowing New Yorkers to go out of their homes and enjoy the rare good weather. In the dark corners, the hidden demons opened small devices like lighters and grinned at them with sharp teeth. The Blade Warrior stood on the roof of a tall building, still wearing black, with a pistol on his waist and two silver samurai swords on his back, looking coldly at the endless stream of vehicles and people downstairs. Where did Eric go? Behind the Blade Warrior, Nick Fury couldn't help but ask again. He has more important things to do. Speaking of Eric, Blade couldn't help but glance up at the sky, but unfortunately Nick Fury was standing behind him and didn't see it at all. I really don't understand. We are both black. I have known him for 2 years, and you have just met him for the first time. Why would he rather believe you than me? Nick Fury hugged his shoulders and kept complaining. Blade couldn't help but turn his head, and the two black heads almost touched each other, because I don't talk much. Sir, do we really want to do this? He is a senator. In front of a high-end villa, Coulson was wearing combat uniforms and squatting in the bushes. Facing the object that was about to be attacked, as a newbie, he was obviously a little hesitant. Coulson, we are soldiers now, we just need to obey orders. If you want to give orders, wait until you become the director. Now, shut your mouth and wait for orders. Garrett was full of impatience and scolded in a low voice. Coulson retreated helplessly and muttered, when I become the director, I will definitely beat you up. 8 minutes and 10 seconds is a very short time. This time may only be enough for a person to eat a fast food meal or read half a page of a newspaper. But this short 8 minutes and 10 seconds is enough for photons to reach the Earth from the surface of the Sun. When the first high-energy photon reached the Earth, Eric, who had been resting with his eyes closed, suddenly opened his eyes, and the dragon under his feet flew up and roared silently. Time's up. Time's up. Turn on the device. Go. 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 Garrett slapped his chest with his hand and activated a hidden device. It was a magnetic field disruptor developed by Eric, which could interfere with the nearby ultraviolet shielding device, causing its magnetic field to be disordered and lose the effect of shielding ultraviolet rays. Coulson also activated the device and followed Garrett's steps with a gun in hand. It's started. In 5 minutes, the solar storm will sweep the Earth. At that time, the radio will be useless. Let's fight. Nick Fury threw away the walkie-talkie in his hand, pulled out the pistol from his waist and greeted the Blade Warrior. The Blade Warrior glanced at him sideways, sneered disdainfully, and fell straight forward. It's amazing to have superpowers. Nick Fury watched the Blade Warrior turn a circle in the air and land steadily on the ground, and couldn't help cursing. Of course, he could only curse. In the end, he had to take the elevator. This building has 25 floors. Even if he had 10 legs, he wouldn't dare to jump down. At the same time, teams of well-trained soldiers broke into the homes of countless high-ranking officials and nobles around the world without saying a word. After breaking the door, they did not hurt ordinary people, but directly attacked high-ranking officials or heads of households. Those who were shot by their guns screamed and turned into ashes, dissipating between heaven and earth. In 5 minutes, 20,000 agents acted simultaneously to eliminate the high-ranking nobles who had transformed into vampires. The strict security system was useless to them, and the groups of bodyguards could not pose a threat to them. Even the high-ranking nobles who became powerful after becoming vampires could not stop their silver-plated bullets. 5 minutes passed in a flash, and the solar storm arrived as expected. The first thing to arrive was the super-strong electromagnetic radiation. Electromagnetic radiation not only affected human communication equipment, but also affected the work of ultraviolet shielding devices. Vampires who relied on this device to hunt during the day suffered a fatal blow. Facing the sunlight, none of them were spared and all turned into ashes. The agents who completed the targeted clearing mission, led by Nick Fury and Blade Warrior, went deep underground and went to the vampire nests to destroy them one by one. With the equipment provided by Eric, no nest could withstand their attack. How many nests are there? Garrett was covered in blood, which covered up a lot of the faint purple light on his clothes. That was the blood of a young agent, who was torn to pieces by a group of vampires in the melee. Even though Garrett killed all the vampires, he was still angry. At this moment, he was not S.H.I.E.L.D. or Hydra, he was just a soldier. Not sure, We know the location of more than 400 nests, but no one can tell how many there are. Nick Fury didn't hit a vampire in a few consecutive shots, so angry that he threw a UV grenade over and eliminated the enemy. What? There are more than 400 vampire nests in the world. God. The newbie Coulson was shocked when he heard the conversation between the two. No. Not the whole world, there are more than 400 in the United States. Blade Warrior came over. He had just wiped out a nest alone, and when he arrived here, he found that Nick Fury and his team had already had a fight with the vampires. Coulson cursed, picked up the gun and continued to move forward. Nick Fury slowly approached the Blade Warrior as he advanced. Now can you tell me what Eric is doing? We don't have enough manpower. With 20,000 people, it's impossible to clear all the nests in the world. You'll know soon. Now let's go deal with a very terrible enemy, Chad Norma. The Blade Warrior said no more, waving his samurai sword and walked at the front of the team. In space, Eric felt the increasingly strong solar storm and slowly started the instrument behind him. I saw a silver light flash, and the huge silver panel fluttered like a bird's wings, attached with a special electromagnetic field. This electromagnetic field intercepted the passing solar storm, and a large amount of magnetic field energy gathered in the funnel, moving towards the center, transforming, and finally turning into an energy beam as thick as an arm, hitting Eric's back. Eric's body shook, his superpowers soared, and his strong body kept shaking in the magnetic field, generating strong electromagnetic pulses, and countless electric currents seemed to surge between his eyes. At this moment, Eric felt stronger than ever before, and the energy in his body was countless times stronger than ever before. His body, which had been strengthened by the super soldier potion, could not accommodate so much energy, and his cells groaned in pain, as if they could collapse at any time. But this was not enough. For the next action, Eric had to accept more energy. He forcibly suppressed the discomfort of excess energy and ran the magnetic field strengthening method with all his strength, using the super strong magnetic field energy to stimulate the cells in his body and enhance his physical fitness. His physique had already surpassed the human limit with the help of the super soldier potion, and was on par with Captain America. Later, it was continuously strengthened under his magnetic field strengthening method, gradually surpassing Captain America. At this time, with the help of the solar storm, Eric's physique was rapidly improved again, surpassing the original by more than double in just a few seconds, and it was still steadily improving, with no slowdown at all. A large amount of electromagnetic waves and energy shuttled through the body, and Eric once again experienced the pain when he was injected with the super soldier potion. He felt that every cell was protesting and resisting the invasion of energy. However, the powerful magnetic field ability had to force these energies into the cells. It was like a tug of war, with both sides suffering damage. Many cells collapsed due to the excess energy, and a lot of energy dissipated after being resisted by the cells. As a battlefield, Eric experienced double the pain. However, everything was worth it. Eric's physique continued to strengthen in the severe pain, and after the strengthening, he could accommodate more energy and use stronger superpowers to strengthen his body, over and over again. About 10 minutes later, Eric clearly felt that his physical strengthening was becoming slower and slower, so he stopped this self-abuse strengthening method. At this time, his physique was at least 5 times that of Captain America. Moreover, such a strong physique allowed him to accommodate more energy, and his superpowers had surpassed the Omega level. At this time, with the continuous support of energy, his superpowers could even cover the entire Earth. The energy beam behind him could no longer shake his body. Eric raised his hands flat, and the silver dragon under his feet suddenly came to life, circling and flying, roaring silently. Eric slowly pushed his palms forward and opened his hands towards the earth. The silver dragon in front of him meandered towards the earth. When the silver dragons crashed into the atmosphere, Eric applied electromagnetic shields to them in time to prevent their energy from being consumed by friction with the air. The silver dragon flew lower and lower, and in a blink of an eye it broke through the troposphere. Eric slapped his palms together fiercely, and the silver dragon was instantly dismembered, turning into tiny particles that were invisible to the naked eye, mixed with the electromagnetic field of the solar storm, and hit the ground. Eric crossed his legs and closed his eyes, which allowed him to focus more. The solar storm mixed with silver particles, under Eric's control, turned into a violent wind that swept across the world. Wherever there were people, it was swept by the violent wind. Countless vampires hiding in the houses turned into ashes in a daze before they realized what was happening. Next, there are countless vampire lairs. The strong wind swept through the streets, and the silver particles flowed into the ground from sewers, ventilation ducts, etc. like air. As long as there were openings, the silver particles would be swept away. This is a long job. The Earth is so vast. Even if Eric has the solar storm on his back and strengthens his powers 5 times, he will not be able to sweep every corner of the world in a short time. This solar storm is expected to last another 4 to 5 hours, so I have to hurry up. New York Temple, 177A Brick Street, New York. Master Gu Yi stood in front of the window, looking at the city that was still prosperous on the surface, but secretly undercurrents. The fan in her hand was fanning unconsciously. Suddenly, she felt a powerful energy sweeping in, and she couldn't help but look towards the source. Go! When she saw it clearly, she smiled with relief. Eric, I saw it right, the soul cannot lie. Wakanda, Royal Palace. Prince T'Chaka was preparing his bags to study in England. His fiancée, Little Storm, was sitting on the window with her legs crossed, looking at him boredly. Suddenly, Little Storm stood up with a face full of shock, looked at the sky and murmured, "So strong." T'Chaka walked over curiously, "Are you talking about solar storms? Don't worry, they can't penetrate Wakanda's energy barrier." No. You don't understand. Little Storm's eyes were full of stars. Someone is controlling the solar storm. He is really strong. Norway, a forest. We have a common goal. Human beings, they. Magneto was making an impassioned speech, but suddenly got stuck and looked at the sky, his eyes dull. Xavier Academy for the Gifted. Professor Hank, help me prepare the brainwave enhancement device. On the Earth, countless powerful or special beings noticed the changes in the solar storm and took their own actions. Nick Fury and Blade, who had already gone underground, were unaware of these changes. They encountered a powerful enemy. Chad Norma, the son of the vampire Archduke Alex Marquinos, is a mutated vampire and a poor experimental subject. He is stronger, more powerful, and recovers faster than ordinary vampires. He is not afraid of the sun, silverware, or garlic. He is the most perfect test subject of Grand Duke Alex Marquinos, the perfect vampire. Blade. Ha ha ha. You are finally here. I can finally taste your blood. Chad Norma laughed wildly, ignoring the ultraviolet source in the room. Blade signaled the agents to step back and walked up with his katana in hand. Where is Whistler? Oh. Are you here to find that old man? It's a pity that when I ate him, he kept shouting that it hurt, ha ha ha. Chad Norma opened his mouth, and his jaw suddenly cracked, with tentacle-like mouthparts after sticking out his mouth. Several agents turned their heads away with some nausea. The Blade Warrior stopped talking, held a samurai sword in his hand, jumped high towards Chad Norma, and fought together. The two fought back and forth for dozens of rounds. Blade Warrior was obviously at a disadvantage. His left hand was broken and twisted into shape. A large piece of his chest collapsed. It looked like he had a lot of broken ribs. If he hadn't been half those with vampire blood would have died long ago. On the other hand, Chad Norma had dozens of wounds on his body from the samurai sword, and a knife penetrated his abdomen, but he didn't care. He reached out and pulled out the katana, and the wounds on his body were healed visibly. Fire. Nick Fury gave the order, and dozens of agents opened fire collectively. Countless silver-plated bullets and ultraviolet bullets hit Chad Norma, beating him back continuously, but there was no substantial damage. Nick Fury took the opportunity to lift Blade into the blood pool next to him. After a while, he stood up intact, picked up the katana and struggled with Chad Norma again. The agents also took this time to add ammunition. Then, Blade was knocked to the ground again, the agents shot back, and Nick Fury took Blade back to the resurrection point. They fought like this for more than 10 rounds. Except for the extra bullet casings, no one on both sides could do anything. This is not the way to go, Fury, our ammunition is about to run out. Is there anything else you can do? Garrett looked at the two fighting on the field and wiped the sweat from his face. What can I do? Eric. Before Nick Fury could curse, a gust of wind suddenly blew from behind him and knocked him to the ground. Before he could react, the gust of wind surrounded Chad Norma and turned into the small tornado trapped him in the middle, and then a large number of shining silver particles gathered and wrapped around him. In the blink of an eye, Chad Norma was wrapped in a silver shell. What the hell? Nick Fury looked around warily, holding the pistol tightly. Perhaps it's Eric's new weapon. The Blade Warrior retreated with the knife in his hand. New weapons. What a liar. Nick Fury couldn't believe it. The silver shell in front of him changed again. A red light suddenly lit up on it, and it became brighter and brighter. The temperature around him became higher and higher, and Nick Fury had to lead people back. What is this? A microwave, Nick Fury said to himself. As he spoke, the human-shaped silver shell began to melt, emitting a dazzling light. The temperature was too high, and the silver actually began to vaporize. Not long after, except for a pool of black marks on the ground, there was no trace of Chad Norma's existence. After successfully solving Chad Norma, Eric once again set his sights on the next lair. Practice makes perfect. After this period of manipulation, Eric has been able to control several storms at the same time and sweep several nests at the same time. Who? Eric suddenly felt a familiar and powerful mental force approaching him, and he could not help but be alert. Max. No, you are not him. You are not a mutant. But why? Your mental powers are so similar. The powerful mental force circled around Eric, as if observing him. Professor Charles. Eric instantly realized that it was his old friend, Professor X, whom he had never met. Oh, sorry, I lost my composure. I am Charles Xavier, the principal of Xavier School for the Gifted. Eric Lanshier. Eric did not shy away from his name. Eric. He also used this name. The same ability, similar mental power. What is the relationship between you and him? Clones, or? Professor X's huge mental power pressed on, as if Eric would go to war with Eric if he did not give him a reasonable explanation. Unfortunately, with the support of the solar storm and endless energy, Eric was not afraid of him. Eric waved his hand and laid down layers of electromagnetic protection. A powerful mental force surged out, controlling the endless electromagnetic radiation and forcibly pushing back Professor X's mental force. Professor Charles, your behavior is a bit rude. I am still working overtime, and while the boss is out for dinner, I quickly typed something, hee hee. Thanks for watching, please subscribe and support our channel.